Chapter 3076. All right. I wanted to convince you, but I didn't expect you to convince me instead. Elder He shook his head. Thank you for your understanding, senior. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. Elder He waved his hand and said, but there's something that we can work together on. What is it? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The vice leader wants to kill you. Elder He's eyes flickered. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He frowned and said, speaking of which, I'm really puzzled. Are you puzzled as to why the vice leader wants to kill you so badly? Elder He asked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. This is also something that I can't figure out. Apart from a few people in the Demon Hall, only the people from the Blood Hall know that you're from the lower realm. Logically speaking, the vice leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance shouldn't make things difficult for you. After all, the person in the wrong is Wang Hui. Elder He said. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, is it possible that someone from the Demon Hall leaked the secret? Absolutely impossible. Other than this old man, the only people who know of your origins are the Hall Master and that girl Chu Yin. Chu Yin and the Demon Hall are people that we absolutely trust. Elder He said. Could it be the Blood Hall? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. We think so too. Moreover, we suspect that the vice leader is backed by the Blood Hall. Elder He's eyes flashed coldly. Do you mean that although the vice leader is from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, he's actually from the Blood Hall? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Yes. That's actually not a big deal. What we're really worried about is whether the Blood Hall is behind the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Elder He said in a deep voice. That shouldn't be possible. The Rogue Cultivator Alliance is a super force in the Eastern continent. I believe that some of them have secretly sided with the Blood Hall. However, I really can't accept that the Blood Hall is behind the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Let alone you, I don't want to think so too. However, there are some things that you have to plan for the best. Elder He. In that case, go and investigate. Given the abilities of your Demon Hall, how could you not find out? Qin Feiyang's brows furrowed. You don't say. We've already started investigating, but we really couldn't find anything. Because the people we arranged in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance are unable to get close to the Vice Alliance leader. Elder He shook his head. What about the Rogue Cultivator Alliances? Qin Feiyang asked. I heard that this person is in seclusion. I wonder where he is hiding. Old He said. Qin Feiyang mumbled. He muttered to himself for a while, and then said, then, what did you just say about us working together? It's to investigate what's hidden behind the Vice Alliance leader's killing of you. Where teat? Alliance Capital. The Alliance Capital is the headquarters of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. It's located at the Azure Wave Snow Mountain. And the Azure Wave Snow Mountain is located in the westernmost part of the Eastern continent. However, it's not easy to enter the Azure Wave Snow Mountain, because only the people from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance can enter. Moreover, there's a barrier around the Azure Wave Snow Mountain. This barrier was personally set up by the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's leader. Without permission. Even I have to use the Sovereign Divine Weapon to break in. Elder He said. The westernmost part of the Azure Wave Snow Mountain. Qin Feiyang muttered. In order to figure out this matter, he had to go to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's headquarters. Because if he didn't enter the Alliance capital, he wouldn't be able to get close to the vice leader. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead and said, if I had known, I wouldn't have killed Yi Yuan. It's useless for you to stay in Yi Yuan because he doesn't know the situation. Elder He shook his head. Yi Yuan doesn't know? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. After knowing that Yi Yuan came to Windsea City, we already thought of him, so we did an investigation on him. He doesn't know the reason why the vice leader killed you. Elder He said. He even hid it from his grandson Yi Yuan. This matter is really not simple. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. That's why we have to investigate. Also, you have to be careful. Yi Yuan isn't a monster. The real monster is Yi Tian. Elder He warned. Yi Tian? Qin Feiyang was stunned. This Yi Tian is also the vice leader's grandson and Yi Yuan's elder brother. Ordinary people might not know his name, but he's very famous in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Palace. Even in the entire Eastern continent, his talent is top-notch, because he has already comprehended 2 types of laws. Moreover, his cultivation has already reached the grand perfection imperishable stage. Elder Hu said. 2 types of laws. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked suspiciously, is he very powerful? Elder Hu was stunned. Comprehending 2 types of laws was not powerful? The ignorant were truly fearless. However, he didn't know that both Frenzy and Qin Feiyang had already grasped 3 types of laws. Anyway, you guys just have to be careful. Yi Yuan has been killed. As his elder brother, he definitely won't let this matter rest. Elder Hu said. Qin Feiyang asked. Then to what extent has he comprehended the 2 types of laws? I heard that he has already comprehended the 2nd profundity of the fire law. As for the other type of law, he seems to have comprehended the 3rd profundity. Elder Hu said. Then he's not as good as senior brother Frenzy. Qin Feiyang smiled. But he has grasped 2 types of laws while Frenzy only has 1. How can they be compared? Elder Hu frowned. Can't compare, can't compare. Qin Feiyang quickly waved his hands. That's right. Don't think that you have the right to be proud just because Frenzy has comprehended the 3rd profundity of the slaughter law. You have to know that this is the sky cloud boundary. There are still people more outstanding than him. Elder Hu said. You're right. We must keep a low profile and be humble in the future. Qin Feiyang nodded repeatedly. All right then. You guys have a plan and see if you can investigate this matter. Also, Elder Hu took out a token and threw it to Qin Feiyang. What's this? Qin Feiyang caught it and looked down. There was a demon word on the front and a fire word on the back. This is this old man's identity medallion. In the Eastern continent, with this token, you can do whatever you want. Elder Hu said proudly. So powerful? Then what if I take this token to rob the demon tower? Qin Feiyang asked curiously. Rob the demon tower? Elder Hu was stunned. I'm just joking. Don't take it seriously. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Elder Hu rolled his eyes and said, let me tell you, don't give it to others like the token that Chu Yin gave you. How can I? I'll definitely treat it like a family heirloom. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he threw it into his interspatial ring. Elder Hu's mouth twitched. With such a casual attitude, how could he treat it like a family heirloom? Who was he kidding? Right. I suddenly remembered something. Can you help me? Qin Feiyang suddenly patted his head and looked at Elder Hu. What's the matter? Elder Hu was puzzled. Help this junior find a few people. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The mysterious youth Li Feng and the Grey Castle appeared. Elder Hu looked at them carefully and asked, who are they? A few old friends. They came to the sky cloud boundary before us, but I don't know where they are now. Qin Feiyang said. All right. As long as they're in the Eastern continent and haven't changed their appearance, it won't be difficult to find them. Elder Hu nodded. And, Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and condensed a few more figures. They were the Fire Qilin, Uncle Beast God, Tan Wu, and the Infernal Divine Hound. Although the Fire Qilin and Uncle Beast God had been missing for many years, he still wanted to try. As for Tan Wu and the Infernal Divine Hound, although they went to the ancient world with them, he didn't know what happened to them. So he wanted to look for them. Are these your friends too? Elder Hu asked. Yes. But I'm not sure if they came to the sky cloud boundary. Let's look for them. Qin Feiyang said. All right. I'll let Chu Yin arrange it when I return to the demonic palace. Elder Hu nodded. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, what role does Chu Yin play in the demonic palace? Won't you know when you enter the demonic palace? Elder Hu laughed. Qin Feiyang was speechless. He cupped his hands and said, I won't see you off. Brat. Elder Hu shook his head and laughed. Then he turned and left. Also, stop following us. Qin Feiyang shouted. Do you think I have so much free time? Elder Hu turned around and rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyang. Then he quickly disappeared from Qin Feiyang's sight. What an interesting old man. Qin Feiyang smiled and returned to the Black Tortoise world. Qin Dage, father has something to talk to you about. Zhuo Xiaoxian's voice immediately sounded in the courtyard below. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He lowered his head and saw Zhuo Xiaoxian holding a transmission divine stone. Zhuo Tianqing's figure was floating in the air. Swoosh! He took a step forward and landed beside Zhuo Xiaoxian. He said with a smile, "Lord Zhuo, you didn't send us a transmission in such a hurry just because you care about us, right? Don't be so polite. If you don't mind, you can call me uncle." Zhuo Tianqing shook his head and smiled. "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded. "First of all, thank you for reminding me. I finally know the grievances Xiaoxian suffered at home all these years." Zhuo Tianqing sighed. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said with a smile, "In that case, uncle won't blame us for killing them?" "No. Because I wanted to clean up the family. You guys did it, but it saved me a lot of trouble." Zhuo Tianqing shook his head. "Then is there anything else?" Qin Feiyang asked. Zhuo Tianqing said in a deep voice, "I just received news that Yi Tian is coming to Winxi City." Yi Tian? Qin Feiyang was stunned. It sounded a little familiar. Wait a minute. Could it be that Yi Tian that Elder Hu mentioned before? This Yi Tian is the eldest grandson of the vice leader. When he heard that Yi Yuan was killed by you guys, he threatened to come and take your lives personally. This time, you guys must not accept his challenge. Just now, the city lord told me that this Yi Tian has not only reached the peak imperishable stage, but also comprehended 2 types of law powers. Yi Yuan can't be compared to him. Zhuo Tianqing warned. "I know all this." Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. "How do you know?" Zhuo Tianqing was stunned. "Elder Hu said so." Qin Feiyang said. "What? You guys really know Elder Hu?" Zhuo Tianqing was surprised. "We've met a few times." Qin Feiyang smiled vaguely. "Just a few times?" Zhuo Tianqing was stunned. He thought that Qin Feiyang and Madman were really from the Demon Hall. He has always wanted senior brother Madman and me to enter the Demon Hall, but we didn't agree. Qin Feiyang smiled. Zhuo Tianqing looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. Elder Hu had personally invited them. What a great honor this was, but they actually didn't agree. What were these young people thinking? This was a typical case of not knowing how lucky they were. Chapter 3077. Father, I can vouch for that. Qin Dage and the others really have nothing to do with the Demon Palace. Zhuo Xiaoxian hurriedly said. I didn't say I don't believe you. Why are you in such a hurry? Zhuo Tiansheng was speechless. I'm just worried that you won't believe me. Zhuo Xiaoxian laughed dryly. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled helplessly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, What about the pills? Pills. Qin Feiyang was stunned. The pills with the 7 dragon-shaped pill auras. Where did you get them? Zhuo Tiansheng asked. Are the pills with 7 dragon-shaped pill auras rare? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Zhuo Tiansheng was speechless. 7 dragon-shaped pill auras were not rare? This kid must be sleepwalking. Qin Feiyang said. One of my companions refined them. What? One of your companions refined them? Zhuo Tiansheng was dumbfounded. He had thought of many possibilities. For example, Qin Feiyang and the others found a treasure by chance. There were pills with 7 dragon-shaped pill auras inside. Or they bought them somewhere, or some alchemist gave them to them. The only thing he did not think was that they refined them themselves. He could not believe that Qin Feiyang and the others had the ability to do so. It was not just 1 or 2 dragon-shaped pill auras. There were 7 dragon-shaped pill auras. There were not many people in the entire Eastern continent who could refine pills of this level. It was too shocking. What companion? Zhuo Tiansheng took a while to recover and asked. Father, he's a pill-refining maniac. His name is Dan Wangkai. He only knows how to refine pills and nothing else. Zhuo Xiaoxian spoke first. After being in the Black Tortoise world for so many years, she knew everyone very well. Dan Wangkai? That's his name. Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. Yes. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. One is called Madman Mo, the other is called Dan Wangkai. What kind of names are these? They are indeed a bunch of weirdos. Zhuo Tiansheng shook his head speechlessly. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, All right, you guys be careful. Thank you for your concern. Qin Feiyang smiled. Xiao Xian, take good care of yourself. If little madman bullies you, you must remember to tell father. Father will immediately go and settle the score with him. Zhuo Tianxing said. I won't. Now only I can bully him. He doesn't dare to bully me. Zhuo Xiaoxian grinned. Cough cough. Zhuo Tianxing coughed dryly and hurriedly said, girls need to be gentle, okay? That depends on who you're dealing with. Zhuo Xiaoxian raised her little head, looking like a proud little princess. Zhuo Tianxing smiled bitterly. He was also helpless towards this precious daughter of his. He could only hope that this little lunatic would treat her well. Immediately after, he put away the divine sound transmission stone and looked at the city lord and elder Yu standing in front of him. The two of them were there the whole time, but they didn't say anything. Now that Yi Yuan had been killed and Third Xing had left, they didn't have to hold back anymore. Zhuo Tianxing said, you all heard it, right? They're not from the demonic palace. Although it's confirmed that they're not from the demonic palace, this result surprised me even more. The city lord sighed. That's right. Elder Huo's identity and status in the demonic palace is very important. He actually personally invited them to the demonic palace. What's so good about them? Elder Yu also had a look of disbelief. We know Elder Huo's character. It's definitely not their identity that can make him value them. Because no matter how high their identity is, they're not worth mentioning in front of Elder Huo. So I think it should be their potential and talent. Look, Madman is so young, but he has already comprehended the third profound of the law of slaughter. Such talent is one of the best in the Eastern continent. Zhuo Tianxing said. Then Qin Feiyang? What's so good about him? Elder Yu was suspicious. You don't say. Although I've met him so many times, I've never seen Qin Feiyang really fight. Usually it's just small fights. The city lord whispered. In short, none of these kids can be underestimated. Especially the alchemy master beside them who can refine 7 dragon-shaped pill auras. Zhuo Tianxing shook his head. The city lord and elder Yu nodded. All right. Let's not talk about them first. We don't know when the Deputy Alliance leader's eldest grandson will come. We have to be careful. From now on, no matter what the occasion is, we can't mention Qin Feiyang's private matters. In addition, we have to increase the bounty on them. We can't reveal any flaws. The city lord reminded. Understood. Zhuo Tianxing and elder Yu nodded. But suddenly, Zhuo Tianxing's expression became strange. What's wrong? The city lord and elder Yu looked at him suspiciously. Did you notice that we seem to have betrayed the rogue cultivator alliance? Zhuo Tianxing frowned. Betrayed? The two were slightly stunned. A trace of a bitter smile appeared on their faces. What they were doing right now really felt like a betrayal. Sigh. It's all for Xiao Xian. Zhuo Tianxing sighed. At the same time, all the major cities in the eastern continent were in an uproar. Did you hear? Yi Yuan was killed. What? He was actually killed. And the people who killed him are Frenzy and Qin Feiyang. These two are too bold. Yi Yuan is the Deputy Alliance leader's grandson. Aren't they afraid of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's revenge? Is there a need to ask? If they were afraid, would they still kill him? Not only did these two kill Yi Yuan, but they also snatched his heaven-defying divine art and heaven-defying divine artifact. You don't know. The heaven-defying divine art and heaven-defying divine artifact are both at the pinnacle level. Everyone was discussing. In just half a day, Qin Feiyang and Frenzy had become a household name in the eastern continent. What was even more unbelievable was that Elder Huo of the Devil Hall actually personally appeared to protect the two of them. For a moment, everyone was guessing the relationship between the two of them and Elder Huo. Some said that the two of them were disciples of the Devil Hall. Some said that the two of them might be Elder Huo's last disciple. Some even said that the two of them were Elder Huo's grandsons who had been hiding in the dark. In short, there were different opinions. Cloud Sea City, Tianyue Tower. Yunxiang, the tower master of Tianyue Tower, and Yimiao sat together. There was a teapot on the table, and there was a faint fragrance of tea. Yunxiang took a sip of tea, looked at the tower master of Tianyue Tower, and said with a smile, You didn't expect Qin Dage and Brother Mo's background to be so powerful, right? It's a little unexpected. The Tower Master of Tianyua Tower nodded. It's more than unexpected. I didn't expect them to be related to the Devil Hall. Yin Xiang shook his head. That's not entirely true, Miao suddenly said. What's wrong? The two of them looked at her suspiciously. Yi Yuan's challenge letter has already shocked the Eastern continent. Elder He might have gone to Wuxia City to take a look out of curiosity. And Elder He might have appeared because Third Xing wants to deal with the Tower Master of the Devil Hall of Wuxia City. Miao said. No. What kind of person is Elder He? Even if Yi Yuan is the grandson of the Deputy Alliance Master, he won't be interested in him. Because in his eyes, they are just two juniors who are fooling around. So there's only one possibility. Elder He is interested in Qin Feiyang and Yi Yuan. Yin Xiang waved his hand. It makes sense when you put it that way. Miao nodded. Then Brother Yin, do you think they killed Wang Hui back then because of us? The Tower Master of Tianyua Tower said. Because of us? Yin Xiang was stunned. Yes. We had no choice but to come to Cloud Sea City because we offended Wang Hui in Wind City. Could it be that they killed Wang Hui out of consideration for our safety? The Tower Master of Tianyua Tower said. This. Yin Xiang couldn't help but fall silent for a moment. I don't think they are cold and heartless people like you said. On the contrary, they are very warm to people. As for why they don't want to be with us, perhaps it's because they trust us. They can't trust us. The Tower Master of Tianyua Tower said. Perhaps. Yin Xiang smiled. Time passed. Half a month passed. Boom. That evening, a young man in white suddenly descended in the sky above Wuxia City. He didn't conceal his aura at all, and it alarmed countless people. This is the City Lord Zhua Tiansheng, and Elder Yu hurriedly ran out of the City Lord's estate and looked at the man in white. The man in white also glanced at the three of them from afar, but he ignored them and said indifferently, Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, Yi Tian, will be waiting for you here. After he finished speaking, he didn't enter the City Lord's estate. Instead, he sat cross-legged in the sky above the city and closed his eyes to cultivate. Although his voice wasn't very loud, it landed in the minds of everyone in Wuxia City. He's the eldest grandson of the Deputy Alliance Master? He really came. Everyone looked at Yi Tian in surprise. Elder Yu glanced at Yi Tian, then looked at the City Lord and Zhua Tiansheng and asked, should we go up and say hello? Forget it. From the looks of it, he doesn't want to be disturbed. The City Lord waved his hand. Very soon, Zhua Tiansheng told Qin Feiyang the news of Yi Tian's arrival through Zhua Shaoxian. To this, Qin Feiyang didn't have much of a reaction. To the people of the Eastern continent, a consummate undead stage powerhouse who had mastered two kinds of power of law was absolutely a shocking and outstanding genius. But in the eyes of him and the madman, it wasn't worth paying attention to. It wasn't just now. In the ancient world, only the experts of the older generation could really make them pay attention. In other words, their eyes had never been placed on their peers. Half a month had passed outside, and 15,000 years had passed in the Black Tortoise realm. The madman had already mastered the battle secret technique, and continued to cultivate, comprehending the power of law. Qin Feiyang was also in seclusion. As for the magic sword slayer, he had also entered the land of origin to cultivate. Compared to the clamor outside, the Black Tortoise realm seemed very calm. Chapter 3078. Time passed day by day. Yi Tian was like a frozen rock, sitting cross-legged in the sky above the city. He did not open his eyes, nor did he say a word, nor did he commit any crimes in Wuxia City like Yi Yuan. This point made the people of Wuxia City somewhat surprised. They originally thought that Yi Tian was more arrogant, domineering, and unscrupulous than Yi Yuan. But they did not expect him to be so honest. At first, everyone was still a little afraid, but slowly, they seemed to get used to his existence. In the end, everyone began to ignore him. Occasionally, they would raise their heads to take a look. So this person was still there. On the same day that Yi Tian appeared in Wuxia City, swoosh, a figure descended in the void in front of the demon hall. This person held a snake-shaped walking stick in his hand and wore a long green robe. His face was old, and he gave off a sinister feeling. I was wondering who it was. So it's the Deputy Alliance Leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Deputy Alliance Leader. Why have you personally come to my demon hall? Chu Yin appeared opposite the green-robed elder and smiled faintly. I don't dare to call you Lord. I'm only here to plead with your hall for one thing. The Deputy Alliance Leader said. You're not here to seek justice for Yi Yuan, are you? Chu Yin frowned. Qin Feiyang and Madman Emo are at fault for Yi Yuan's death. I have no reason to seek justice from the demon hall. The Deputy Alliance Leader shook his head. Then what is it for? Chu Yin was suspicious. I hope that the older generation will not interfere in the matters of the younger generation. The Deputy Alliance Leader said. You mean Yi Tian? Chu Yin was stunned. The Deputy Alliance Leader said. Miss Yin is intelligent and pure. I believe you know what I mean. Don't worry. As long as Yi Tian doesn't act recklessly in Winxi City like Yi Yuan, our demon hall won't interfere. Chu Yin chuckled. Hearing this, the Deputy Alliance Leader secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, he was testing the waters to see if Qin Feiyang and Madman Emo were related to the demon hall. Now that he looked at it, even if the two were related, it didn't seem to be deep. But I'm curious. Why do you want to get rid of them so badly? According to my investigation, they aren't evil people, and they don't have any grudges with your Rogue Cultivator Alliance. To think that you, the Vice Alliance Leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, are so high and mighty. Why would you be so interested in them? Chu Yin looked at the Deputy Leader curiously. He killed Wang Hui. Isn't that a grudge? Wang Hui is a member of my Rogue Cultivator Alliance. If this old man doesn't do anything about it, how can I establish myself in the Eastern Continent in the future? That's all I have to say. I won't disturb you any further. Farewell. After the Vice Leader finished speaking, he turned around and activated an altar. He then left without looking back. Wang Hui, Chu Yin muttered. She looked at the Vice Alliance Leader's back and teased. Is it really just because of Wang Hui? The Vice Alliance Master's eyes flashed slightly. He didn't reply and quickly disappeared without a trace. Interesting. Elder Hu suddenly appeared behind Chu Yin. Chu Yin was shocked. She quickly turned her head to look at Elder Hua and said angrily, Old man, why are you acting like a ghost? You scared me. Are you that timid? Elder Hua rolled his eyes. I'm a weak woman, okay? Do you really think I'm a man? Chu Yin was speechless. Ha! Elder Hua smiled embarrassedly and asked, Have you found out anything about the person I asked you to help me investigate? It's only been half a month. How can it be so fast? Chu Yin glared at him angrily. Our Devil Tower is spread across all the cities in the Eastern Continent. Isn't it easy to find a few people? Can't you be more careful? After all, it's the person Qin Feiyang is looking for. Elder Hua frowned. Is Qin Feiyang that great? Chu Yin snorted coldly. You little girl. Let's not talk about anything else first. Qin Feiyang has a sovereign divine weapon. It's worth it for us to rope him in. Elder Hua was helpless. Rope him in? In my opinion, we should just kill them. The sovereign divine weapon will be the most valuable thing in our hands. Chu Yin said. Don't talk nonsense. Don't talk nonsense. Elder Hua quickly waved his hand and said in a deep voice. Since they dared to go against the Blood Hall, they won't care about the Devil Hall. Moreover, the more I look at them, the more I feel that they're not simple. It's best not to make them an enemy if it's not necessary. Chu Yin looked at Elder Hua as if she had discovered a new continent. Why are you looking at me like that? Elder Hua was suspicious. I really didn't expect that there would be someone in this world that you're afraid of. Chu Yin said. It's not fear. It's attitude. When facing different people, you have to use different attitudes. Let's not talk about this first. Have you found out the origin of the 2 extra sovereign divine weapons in the Blood Hall? Elder Hua asked. No. The people we've planted in the Blood Hall have been investigating, but not many people seem to know about this. It seems that only Elder Hai and the Blood Hall Master know about it. Even the Blood Hall Grand Deacon doesn't know about it. Chu Yun rubbed her forehead, looking a little annoyed. This matter is getting more and more bizarre. It seems that it's necessary to ask Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo about it. Elder Hu whispered. We should have asked them a long time ago. Because from their appearance at that time, I know that they are mortal enemies with the two sovereign divine weapons. Chu Yun said. All right, I'll go out for a walk. After saying that, Elder Hu turned around and left at lightning speed. Going out again? Chu Yun was stunned. What was wrong with this old man? He usually didn't go out, but during this period of time, he went out every day. Buzz. Suddenly, the divine sound transmission stone rang. Chu Yun took out the divine sound transmission stone, and a shadow appeared. Greetings, Miss Yin. It was a middle-aged man, about 40 years old. He restrained his aura and stood in a forest. Old Su, what's the matter? Chu Yun asked with a smile. Half a month ago, didn't you ask us to find a few people in the demon towers in each city? Now, I've found one of them, the middle-aged man said. Where? Chu Yun was slightly stunned and hurriedly asked. Rhinoceros Mountain Range. I'm right here. Do you want to come over and confirm it personally? The middle-aged man asked. Okay, I'll go over right away. Give me the coordinates. Chu Yun nodded. After the middle-aged man told Chu Yun the coordinates, Chu Yun immediately used the divine sound transmission stone to activate the altars. Soon, she silently arrived beside the middle-aged man. He's right in front. The middle-aged man pointed ahead and said, Let's go and take a look. After Chu Yun said that, the two of them quietly walked inside and soon saw a pool. The pool was about a few 100 feet long and extremely clear. A young man in white was lying on the water with a green foxtail grass in the corner of his mouth. There was a trace of cynicism in his eyes. He looked very comfortable with his eyes narrowed. Beside the young man, there was a 2-meter-long snow python lying on the ground. It also looked leisurely. It's really him, Chu Yun muttered. I can't see through his aura, so I didn't alert him. The middle-aged man transmitted his voice. You can't see through him? Chu Yun was stunned and quickly checked the young man's cultivation. Soon, she found that there seemed to be a mysterious veil on the young man's body. Even she couldn't see through it. I guess his cultivation might not be strong. He should have some kind of secret treasure that can hide his cultivation. The middle-aged man thought to himself. Chu Yun nodded. This person did not give her a sense of crisis. Suddenly, the young man yawned and asked slowly, Xiao Shui, am I that handsome? Young master, can you not call me Xiao Shui? It's not appropriate for a woman to call me that. The snow python at the side spoke with a helpless expression. That's what makes you cute. The young man chuckled. I don't want to be so cute. The snow python pursed its lips. I'm asking you a question. Am I very handsome? The young man spoke again. Yes, yes, yes. The snow python nodded. No wonder they have been hiding in the dark to peep at me. It turns out that they are coveting my beauty. The young man nodded in realization. Cough, cough. The snow python immediately coughed dryly. Beauty? He was thinking too much. At the same time, hearing the conversation between the man and the beast, Chu Yun and the middle-aged man were shocked. They were actually noticed by this person? The two of them looked at each other and did not hide anymore. They walked out of the forest and stood by the pool. The young man opened his eyes and looked at Chu Yun. With a lazy look he said, Don't be too infatuated with me. I'm not interested in you. The corner of Chu Yun's mouth twitched. She was really shameless and said, I'm not looking for you. It's not you? The young man was slightly stunned and said indifferently, Then it should be Qin Feiyang. How do you know? Chu Yun was stunned. In the sky cloud realm, who else would look for me besides him? The young man shook his head. Do you really know each other? Chu Yun was suspicious. The young man looked up at the sky and said with a strange expression, I'm his little brother. Of course I know him. Who are he and Madman Mo? Chu Yun was immediately interested. Men. The young man said. Chu Yun immediately frowned. Wasn't this nonsense? Who didn't know that they were men? I'm wondering, why are you asking about them? Don't tell me you like them. I'm telling you they're all taken now. Don't think about it. The young man said. A row of black lines appeared on Chu Yun's forehead. What was this? The young man held the green foxtail in his mouth and said indifferently, "All right, don't disturb my sleep. You can go. Just pretend that you didn't see me." Sleep? Chu Yun and the middle-aged man looked at each other. What kind of freak was this? With such a cultivation base, he actually liked to sleep so much. Chu Yun frowned and said, "Aren't you friends? Why don't you want to see them?" "Who said that friends have to meet? Besides, they cause a lot of trouble wherever they go. It's better for me to stay away from them so that I don't have to live with them all day." The young man shook his head. The two of them looked at the young man speechlessly. As friends, he was afraid of trouble? Were they still friends? Sigh. "It seems that you won't give up so easily. I'd better take the initiative and get lost." The young man stood up and stretched. Then he took the snow python and took a step out. He instantly merged into the void and disappeared without a trace. The middle-aged man was stunned. This is the law of space and time, and it has already reached the realm of perfection. There's no need for any movements. With just a thought, it can merge into the void. A trace of surprise appeared on Chu Yun's face. She also mastered the law of space and time, so she could see the strength of the young man's law of space and time at a glance. These people from the lower realm were not simple. Chapter 3079. Another period of time passed. Outside the Tsonglan Snow Mountain, the sky was filled with snow and the ground was covered in snow. In a nice valley, the Vice Alliance leader held his walking stick with both hands and squinted his eyes as he stood quietly. Cold winds howled as the cold current pierced into his bones. However, the Vice Alliance leader was like a stubborn rock, not moving at all. Shwa. After an unknown period of time, suddenly, a black shadow landed in the ice valley and stood opposite the Vice Alliance leader. This person was wrapped in a black robe and looked extremely mysterious. "He's here." The Vice Alliance leader opened his eyes and looked at the black-robed man. There was no fluctuation in his eyes. "Yes." The black-robed man nodded and asked, "How did the Demon Palace respond?" His voice was low and hoarse. The Vice Alliance leader said, "Chu Yun personally said that they will not interfere in the matters of the younger generation." "Very good. As long as they don't appear in the Wind Sea City, then there's a chance to kill Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo," the black-robed man said. "Even so, I still have some concerns. Although they said that they won't interfere, what if they hide in the dark? When you appear in the Wind Sea City, I'm afraid it will be disadvantageous to both of us." The Vice Alliance leader frowned. "You don't have to think about this. We will make arrangements and will not let what happened last time happen again," the black-robed man said. What happened last time? When the Vice Alliance leader heard this, a hint of anger flashed across his eyes, and he said gloomily, "Last time, it was because I trusted you that Yuan died tragically in their hands. There's nothing we can do about it. At that time, I was hiding in the Wind Sea City, preparing to kill them, but who would have thought that Elder Huo was also hiding in the Wind Sea City? But this time we have really planned it out. You just have to ask Yi Tian to think of a way to force Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo out." The black-robed man said, "It better be so. If anything happens to Tian, I will definitely not let it go. Also, after this, don't forget your promise to give me Qin Feiyang's sovereign divine weapon," the Vice Alliance leader said gloomily. "Don't worry, we only want Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. We are not interested in sovereign divine weapon." The black-robed man laughed hoarsely. The Vice Alliance master's eyes flashed with surprise as he frowned and said, "If they aren't even interested in the sovereign divine weapon, could it be that Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo are more valuable than the sovereign divine weapon? That's not something you should be concerned about." The black-robed man's tone sank slightly. Then he opened an altar and left. Looking at the back of the black-robed man, a strange light flashed in the depths of the Vice Alliance leader's eyes. Following closely, he took out the Divine Voice Transmission Stone. A short while later, a phantom appeared. It was Yi Tian, who was sitting in the sky above Wind Sea City. "Tian, go to the spatial divine item," the vice leader said with a smile. "All right." Yi Tian nodded and immediately disappeared. Where is he? When they realized that Yi Tian had disappeared in the blink of an eye, the eyes of the people in the city were filled with bewilderment. Inside the spatial divine item, the vice leader asked, "Did they appear?" "No." Yi Tian shook his head. The vice leader said, "Then think of a way to force them out." "How?" Yi Tian was puzzled. The vice leader said, "Use your brother's methods." Yi Tian raised his brows and shook his head. "Grandson doesn't agree." "Then how long are you going to wait like this?" "Tian, our grandfather knows that you are kind-hearted and don't want to hurt the innocent. But sometimes, we have to do this. This matter is really important to grandfather. You must do it." The vice leader looked at Yi Tian pleadingly. But Yi Tian frowned. The vice leader's gaze turned cold as he shouted, "There's no but. Within half a year, you must force them out." "All right." Yi Tian nodded. When Yi Tian appeared again, looking at the people in the city below, his eyes revealed a trace of reluctance and hesitation. In the end, he once again sat cross-legged in the air and closed his eyes. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days. As the days passed, his heart gradually turned cold, and a bone-piercing cold current gradually spread out from his body. The people of Wuxia City could clearly feel that the aura in the sky had become somewhat different. On this day 3 months later, swoosh, Yi Tian suddenly opened his eyes and glanced at the city below, shouting, "Where is the city lord?" Whoosh. 3 figures immediately rushed out of the city lord mansion and landed in front of Yi Tian. They bowed and said, "Young master, what orders do you have?" They were the city lord, Zhuo Tiansheng, and Elder Yu. "Immediately post a notice and tell Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo that from today onwards, I will kill a baby in Wuxia City every day they don't appear," Yi Tian said. "What? Kill a baby?" The 3 of them trembled. Yi Tian looked at the 3 of them and asked, "Do you need me to say it again?" "No need, no need. But we are worried that you will anger the demon palace. The most important thing is that this will have a bad impact on our rogue cultivator alliance. After all, what your brother Yi Yuan did in Wuxia City has already aroused public anger. If you continue to do this..." The 3 of them were worried. "Then tell the people of Wuxia City that this is not what I want to do. It was Qin Feiyang and the others who forced me to do this. If you don't want to implicate yourself, then hurry up and find Qin Feiyang and the others," Yi Tian said. "All right." The 3 of them nodded helplessly. Killing babies. This was even crueler than Yi Yuan. This matter could not be neglected. Otherwise, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance would definitely become a street rat in the Eastern continent in the future. Everyone would hate and shout at them. As expected, when this notice was released, it immediately caused a huge uproar in Wuxia City. I didn't expect Yi Tian to be such a person. No. He's even more inhumane than Yi Yuan. He doesn't even let go of a newborn baby. Can you all stop complaining? Hurry up and find Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo, otherwise, who knows how many children will suffer. At that moment, the people of Wuxia City moved out one after another, searching for Madman and Qin Feiyang everywhere. When some couples heard this news, they immediately wanted to move their children out. However, the 4 city gates were all sealed. Everyone else could leave, but only the babies could not leave Wuxia City. What? Isn't this nonsense? Emolu, the white-haired old man, sat at the desk. When he heard the report from the people below, he immediately flew into a rage. Right now, there are a lot of people outside the door, begging our Emolu to help. Do you think we should interfere or not? The guard standing opposite him asked. The white-haired old man pondered for a moment and said, "This matter is not something that I can decide. I have to ask Miss Yin for instructions. You can go out first. If there's anything, report to me at any time." "Yes," the guard respectfully replied, then turned around and left quickly. Rogue Cultivator Alliance. The white-haired old man's eyes flashed as he took out the sound transmission godstone. Buzz. Soon, Chu Yun's shadow appeared. Sun Jingzhong greets Miss Chu Yun. The white-haired old man stood up and bowed. "Is there any movement from Yi Tian?" Chu Yun asked with a smile. "How do you know?" Sun Jingzhong was stunned. For you to send me a message personally, apart from Yi Tian, what else can it be? Chu Yin shook her head. Miss, you really have great foresight. It's indeed because of Yi Tian. Sun Jingzhong nodded and explained the situation briefly. What? These people are crazy. Aren't they afraid that they will really become the cancer of the Eastern continent and be despised by everyone? Chu Yin was instantly enraged. I think these people have long forgotten the original intention of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance when it was first established. Sun Jingzhong sneered. Chu Yin pondered for a moment and waved her hand. Let's not interfere in this matter first. Not interfere? Sun Jingzhong looked at Chu Yin in shock. It's not that we don't interfere, but we won't interfere for the time being. We'll let the Rogue Cultivator Alliance continue to cause trouble. When everyone really despises them, we'll step in. At that time, the image of the Demon Hall in the eyes of the world will immediately become the savior of the Eastern continent. At that time, we'll wipe out the Rogue Cultivator Alliance in one fell swoop, Chu Yin said. I see. Miss, you're really brilliant. Sun Jingzhong cupped his hands and smiled. What's there to be brilliant about? To be honest, I don't want to sympathize with these people at all. That's because they brought all of this upon themselves. Think about it. Back then, the Demon Hall was the only ruler of the Eastern continent. They felt that it was not good for them that we occupied all the resources, so they wanted to support the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Now the Rogue Cultivator Alliance has finally grown with their support. But how did the Rogue Cultivator Alliance repay them? So at the end of the day, they were the ones who caused this situation today. Naturally, they have to bear the consequences. Chu Yin said calmly. That's true. Sun Jingzhong nodded. If the Demon Hall had not been protecting the Eastern continent would have been devoured by the forces of the Western continent, Northern continent, and Southern continent. As for resources, since the Demon Hall wanted to protect the Eastern continent, they naturally had to work hard to strengthen themselves. Otherwise, how could they protect it? Could they do it by clapping their hands? Definitely not. To strengthen the Demon Hall, they naturally needed a lot of resources. But in the end, what did they get in exchange for their efforts? Not only were they not grateful, but they were also filled with hostility towards the Demon Hall. Who wouldn't feel aggrieved when encountering such a thing? After all, not everyone was a saint and selfless. Even if they didn't chase after the Demon Hall, they should at least show some respect. Just do as I say. Let these people open their eyes and see clearly who is the one who is really protecting the Eastern continent. Chu Yin said. Understood. Sun Jingzhong replied respectfully. That night, after midnight, Yi Tian really killed a child. Looking at this bloody scene, everyone immediately realized that Yi Tian was not joking with them. Hence, everyone was in danger and desperately searched for Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian. What should we do? City Lord Mansion. Zhuo Tianxing and the other two sat in a secret room, all of them burning with anxiety. They really wanted to inform Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian, but they were worried about Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian's safety. After all, Yi Tian was not Yi Yuan. He was a true monster. No, we really can't let Yi Tian continue to mess around like this. Otherwise, not to mention the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, even the three of us won't have the face to establish ourselves in Wen Sea City in the future. The city lord suddenly raised his head and looked at Zhuo Tianxing. Immediately send a message to Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian. All right. Hearing this, Zhuo Tianxing gritted his teeth and took out the voice transmission god stone. Chapter 3080. After about 10 breaths, Zhuo Xiaoxian appeared. Xiaoxian, what are you doing? Why did you take so long to respond? Zhuo Tianxing looked at her in confusion. Qin Dage was in the middle of a breakthrough, so he didn't notice the commotion from the divine voice stone. Zhuo Xiaoxian said. Breakthrough? Zhuo Tianxing was slightly stunned. He said in surprise. Has he reached the minor achievement imperishable stage? No. Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head. Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head and asked. Are you looking for me or Qin Feiyang? I have something urgent to talk to Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo, Zhuo Tianxing said. Then you'll have to wait for a while. Zhuo Xiaoxian said. It's okay. Zhuo Tianxing waved his hand. The city lord looked at the scenery behind Zhuo Shaoxian and said with a smile, Shaoxian, can you show us the situation of the Black Tortoise world? Zhuo Shaoxian was standing in the courtyard, facing the castle, so the scenery behind her appeared in their sight again. Behind her, in addition to the neatly arranged courtyards, there seemed to be a herb field. However, they could only see the tip of the iceberg. This. Zhuo Shaoxian hesitated for a while, then shook her head and said, Father, no, I have to get Qin Dage's permission first. All right. The city lord looked helpless. This was the first time Zhuo Shaoxian rejected his request. As expected, a married woman was like water that had been poured out. Most importantly, she was not married yet. If she was so loyal to Qin Feiyang and the others before she was married, then what would happen when she was married? After turning off the divine voice stone, Zhuo Shaoxian raised her head and continued to look at the castle. Zhuo Shaoxian was not the only one. Except for Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang. The others were also standing in their courtyards, looking at the castle nervously and expectantly. In the sky above the ancient castle, there were patches of purple divine lightning, like angry waves rolling nonstop. The power of these thunderbolts was almost stronger than all the thunderbolts in the world. The people and beasts present all felt a fatal threat. Outside, it had been more than 40 days since the battle between Lunatic and Yi Yuan. However, in the Black Tortoise world, more than 40,000 years had passed. Qin Feiyang had already comprehended the second profundity of his 3 laws before the battle between the madman and Yi Yuan. But now, after more than 40,000 years of hard work, the third profundity of the law of lightning was finally about to take shape. Crack. Rumble. The sound of thunder reverberated in all directions. Purple divine thunder roared in the sky. It was like a heavenly tribulation descending upon the world, terrifying beyond compare. Suddenly, all the divine lightning in the sky transformed into huge lightning dragons that pounced in all directions. The void was shattering, and the devil's land was trembling. What is this brat doing? The little boy appeared with a frown. Wasn't it just comprehending the third profound? Was there a need to cause such a huge commotion? Actually, he did not know. Qin Feiyang was now in a very strange state. He had no idea what was happening outside. At this moment, his consciousness felt as if he was in a sea of lightning, with countless lightning dragons flying around him. Each of these lightning dragons had the power to destroy the world, but in front of him, they were as docile as little lambs. Even, these lightning dragons carried him and soared in the sky. Gradually, these lightning dragons merged together and turned into a huge dragon that soared into the sky. At the same time, above the ancient castle, a huge lightning dragon also appeared. Purple divine light shrouded the world. Roar. All of a sudden, accompanied by a deafening dragon roar, the huge lightning dragon rushed into the sky, and a huge hole suddenly appeared. Haha. The next moment, accompanied by a loud laugh, Qin Feiyang rushed out of the ancient castle, his face full of excitement. Laughing your sister. Little Wimp's face was dark, and the origin force emerged, quickly repairing the shattered sky and void. I'm happy. Qin Feiyang chuckled, his entire body in high spirits. So you have already grasped the third profound? Little Wimp asked. Of course. The third profound, the wrath of thunder. Qin Feiyang nodded. That's not right. Didn't you first comprehend the law of light, then the law of karma, and finally the law of thunder? Why did you comprehend the third profound of the law of thunder first? Little Wimp looked at him suspiciously. Maybe it's because I have experienced too many heavenly tribulations, so it's easier for me to comprehend the law of thunder, Qin Feiyang said. That's true. But the law of karma is the most important. You have to be especially attentive. Little Wimp reminded. I know. But I found that the law of karma is harder to comprehend than the law of light and law of thunder. Qin Feiyang frowned. That's for sure. After all, the law of karma is one of the strongest laws in the world. Little Wimp said. Makes sense. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Also, I have thought about this 6-word divine formula carefully. I personally think that it should be formed by the law of profound. If you have time, study it more. Perhaps you can comprehend a new law of force from the 6-word divine formula. Little Wimp said. A new law of force. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. In order to step into the sovereign realm, the first necessary condition was to have 6 types of law of force. And now he had only grasped 3 types, which was halfway. If he could really comprehend a new law of force from the 6-word divine formula, it would be equivalent to him meeting the requirements to step into the sovereign realm. Alright, next time be quieter. Little Wimp stared at Qin Feiyang and disappeared without a trace. Feiyang. Mermaid Princess immediately went up to him. Qin Feiyang grabbed Mermaid Princess's hand and asked, "How long has it been?" "More than 40,000 years. Mermaid Princess said. "Then it has only been 40 days outside." Qin Feiyang muttered and lowered his head to look at the ancient castle. "I wonder how Senior Brother Frenzy's progress is." "I guess it will be soon," Mermaid Princess said. Both of them were in seclusion at the same time, but Frenzy spent more time to comprehend the battle's secret technique. Qin Feiyang said, "Anyway, I have to work harder than Senior Brother Frenzy." "Why?" Mermaid Princess was suspicious. "Because Senior Brother Frenzy's law of force is above mine. If I don't work hard, I won't be able to surpass him." Qin Feiyang said. Back then, before he comprehended the law of force, Frenzy's law of slaughter had already entered the 2nd stage. It could also be said that before he was born, Frenzy had already comprehended the law of slaughter. This was Frenzy's advantage. And now, although he had already comprehended the 3rd profound of the law of thunder, Frenzy had also comprehended the 3rd profound of the law of slaughter. And it wouldn't be long before he comprehended the 3rd profound of another law of force. So, in terms of law of force, Frenzy was still above him. Alright, don't be dissatisfied. Look at the Sky Cloud realm. How many can comprehend the 3rd profound of the Undying realm? Mermaid Princess was speechless. We can't compare with ordinary people. If we want to compare, we have to compare with geniuses. For example, a monster like Senior Brother Frenzy. Qin Feiyang laughed. It turns out that Senior Brother Frenzy has always been a monster in your eyes. Mermaid Princess covered her mouth and laughed. Isn't that so? Qin Feiyang shook his head. Qin Dage, you don't know, but in Little Frenzy's eyes, you are also a monster. Zhuo Xiaoxian walked over at this time and laughed. Is that so? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes, he has told me more than once that being with you is very stressful, and that I have to work hard at all times. Otherwise, if I'm not careful, I will be surpassed by you, Zhuo Xiaoxian said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Now that you mention it, I am confident again. You two are friends who have gone through life and death together, but you are still secretly competing." Mermaid Princess was speechless. You don't understand. You can only improve faster if you have a strong opponent. Qin Feiyang smiled. Zhuo Xiaoxian said, "By the way, Qin Dage, my father and the others seem to be looking for you." Qin Feiyang was startled and asked suspiciously, "What is it?" "I don't know." Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head. Qin Feiyang said, "Then send them a message. I will ask." Okay. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded and took out the voice transmission stone. Buzz. Soon. The figures of Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two appeared. "Greetings, uncles and Senior Yu." Qin Feiyang bowed. Zhuo Tiansheng sized up Qin Feiyang's cultivation and frowned. "It's not a breakthrough." "What did you break through?" "It's nothing." "Why are you looking for me?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "You are being mysterious. There is indeed something very troublesome, and I need you to do it," Zhuo Tiansheng said in a deep voice. "You need us to do it?" Qin Feiyang was startled. "Yes." Zhuo Tiansheng nodded and briefly explained Yi Tian's situation. "What?" They heard about it. Zhuo Xiaoxian and the Mermaid Princess could not help but turn pale. Qin Feiyang also frowned slightly and asked, "What about the Demon Palace? Why didn't they stop it?" "The Demon Palace." Zhuo Tiansheng pondered for a while and shook his head. "Although we have not talked to the Demon Palace directly, we can't guess what they are thinking." "Thinking?" Qin Feiyang was startled. "The Demon Palace is very unhappy with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, and even wants to get rid of us." Therefore, they can't wait for us to do more evil things. Zhuo Tianxing sighed. I see. Qin Feiyang smiled. The more evil things the Rogue Cultivator Alliance did, the more people would be unhappy with them. In this way, the Demon Palace would be justified to deal with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. This was because the Rogue Cultivator Alliance rose, because of the support of the people. Therefore, before dealing with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, the Demon Palace had to find a suitable reason. And now first it was Yi Yuan, and now it was Yi Tian. Those who originally supported the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had gradually changed their views. When the Rogue Cultivator Alliance completely lost the hearts of the people, that would be the time for the Demon Palace to eliminate the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Even we understand this logic. Why does the Deputy Alliance leader still want to do this? Isn't this bringing the Rogue Cultivator Alliance to a dead end? Qin Feiyang frowned. I'm not sure. Zhuo Tianxing shook his head. What about the alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance? Are we just going to let the Deputy Alliance leader continue to do whatever he wants? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. We are also trying to contact the alliance leader, but we can't reach him. Zhuo Tianxing sighed. The city lord looked at Qin Feiyang and sighed. Only you and little lunatic can do this. Let me think about it. With that, Qin Feiyang asked Zhuo Xiaoxian to turn off the voice transmission stone. Chapter 3081. Feiyang, what's there to think about? He won't even let a child go. He's worse than a beast. The mermaid princess said angrily. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, I'm thinking that this matter shouldn't be that simple. What do you mean? The mermaid princess and Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at him suspiciously. You heard it just now. Yi Tian didn't hurt the people of Wen Sea City at first. This means that he's still different from Yi Yuan. But why would he suddenly do such a thing? Qin Feiyang said. Isn't it obvious? He's forcing you and senior brother Fengzi to go out. The mermaid princess said. But isn't this too deliberate? Qin Feiyang frowned. Deliberate? The two girls looked at each other, and the suspicion in their eyes grew stronger. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, In short, I just feel that this matter isn't simple. Then are we really not going to do anything? He has already killed a child in the wee hours of the morning. This is definitely not a joke. Zhuo Xiaoxian was quite anxious. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian, then looked at the mermaid princess and asked, Do you really want me to step in? The two girls hesitated again. If it was really as Qin Feiyang said, and this matter was not simple, then wouldn't Qin Feiyang be in danger when he went out? Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. He smiled and said, All right, I'm a kind-hearted person. I'll go and meet him, and see what he wants to do. Then be careful. The mermaid princess reminded. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and then disappeared. Wen Sea City. Everyone was going crazy from anxiety. Because no matter how they looked, they couldn't find Qin Feiyang and Zhuo Xiaoxian. It's getting late. If we don't find them, another innocent child will be killed. What do you think we should do? Outside the city, tens of thousands of people gathered together, looking at the gradually darkening sky, their faces full of worry. Don't tell me they didn't receive any news about such a big thing? Actually, it's fine if I didn't receive the news. Who knows, it might appear again. But if they receive the news, they will definitely hide. After all, Yi Tian is not Yi Yuan. They will definitely be afraid. These people were basically parents. They were worried that their children would be harmed. Look. Suddenly, one of the middle-aged men pointed to the side of the mountain. Everyone raised their heads to look, and a trace of bewilderment crept onto their faces. Is it him? Everyone rubbed their eyes in disbelief. When they looked over again, they saw a tall young man in white walking over in the air. It's him. It's really him. Qin Feiyang. Immediately, the people present hurriedly flew toward Qin Feiyang, as if they had seen their savior. Ugh. Qin Feiyang looked at this scene with a rather stunned expression. Since when was he so popular? Brother Qin, you're finally here. Please, you must help us. It's not easy for us to give birth to a child. A group of people directly knelt in the void, crying. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and hurriedly said, Everyone, don't be like this. Get up quickly. If you don't promise us, we won't get up. A woman in her 20s said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I'm here this time for Yi Tian. Really? Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Thank you. Brother, we will never forget this kindness. Everyone was grateful. It's okay. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Brother Qin, you must kill Yi Tian. Suddenly, another young man in his 20s ran to Qin Feiyang and shouted with a face full of resentment. Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. The young man said, I'm the father of the child who was killed last night. Get up quickly. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat and hurriedly helped the young man up. Please, as long as you kill him, I'll be your slave in the future. The young man said. I can't guarantee it. I can only say that I'll do my best. Qin Feiyang sighed. After all, Yi Tian was a powerhouse at the peak of the undead stage. And he knew nothing about Yi Tian. How could it be so easy to kill him? All right, don't block Brother Qin's way. A middle-aged man shouted. Hearing this, everyone retreated to the side. Therefore, under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, Qin Feiyang stepped into the sky above the city step by step. Even the city guards didn't stop him. They even looked at Qin Feiyang with some admiration in their eyes. For the sake of those innocent children, knowing that Yi Tian was a monster, he still came to fight. Not to mention anything else, his courage and responsibility were enough to be admired. Is he here? At the same time, the city lord's mansion. The city lord Zhua Tiansheng, and Elder Yu looked at a guard below. He's here. The guard nodded. The three immediately got up, rushed out of the city lord's mansion, and looked up at the sky. This kid is really a newborn calf that is not afraid of tigers. Demon Tower. Sun Zhengzhong stood in front of the window, looking up at Qin Feiyang helplessly. It seemed that Miss Chu Yun's wish was going to fall through. Because once Qin Feiyang appeared, Yi Tian would definitely not do evil again. However, after the two incidents of Yi Yuan and Yi Tian, he believed that the people of the Eastern continent would definitely have a different view of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance than before. In other words, what the two had done had planted a seed of disgust in people's hearts. This seed would sooner or later sprout and grow stronger. Let's talk about this later. Now let's see what kind of means Qin Feiyang had. Would he be like a lunatic and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat? Sun Jingzhong's face was full of expectation. At the same time, Yi Tian, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky above the city, slowly opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang. So calm? The attitude that Qin Feiyang displayed made him feel rather astonished. You're Yi Tian? Qin Feiyang walked to the opposite side of Yi Tian and smiled faintly. Yes. I am. Yi Tian stood up, and his eyes were incomparably calm. Qin Feiyang was also surprised by this person's calmness, and lack of killing intent. He said, I can see that you're different from your brother, but why did you do such a hateful thing? If I didn't do this, would you have appeared? Yi Tian said faintly. In order to force me out, you didn't hesitate to bear the infamy. Is it worth it? Qin Feiyang sighed. I don't know. Yi Tian shook his head. Qin Feiyang frowned slightly and seemed to find a trace of helplessness between Yi Tian's brows. Could it be that the deputy leader forced him to do this? Yi Tian did not continue this topic and asked, Where's Madman Mo? He won't appear for the time being. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Tian was slightly taken aback and shook his head. If you're alone, you're not my opponent. Just come with me. Where to? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The Alliance capital. To accompany my brother in death. Yi Tian said very lightly, but there was a domineering aura in his words that could not be ignored. Well, it seems that this battle can't be avoided. Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly. You really want to fight with me? Yi Tian was stunned. One was at the initial stage of the invincible realm, the other was at the peak of the invincible realm. There was a difference of 4 small realms. He was very puzzled. Where did this person's courage come from? Let's not be long-winded, come on. Qin Feiyang said, and his aura suddenly rolled out. Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang, and his aura slowly emerged. Boom. But in the end, his aura also stopped at the initial stage of the invincible realm. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang frowned. Since you want to fight, then let's be fair. After Yi Tian said that, he immediately took a step forward, and with an extremely shocking speed, he instantly arrived in front of Qin Feiyang. Fair, Qin Feiyang murmured. He did not expect Yi Tian to be such a person. He could be considered a gentleman. Boom. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and slapped at Yi Tian. The moment the fist and the palm met, a destructive wave suddenly roared out with the two as the center. The wind whistled, and their clothes and hair were rustling in the wind. Invisible forces crazily collided. Boom. In the end, both of their bodies shook and retreated at the same time, and their faces were somewhat pale. Your physical body and strength. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. This person's physical body and strength had actually reached the supreme realm. Your physical body and strength are not bad, Yi Tian said. Boom. The two of them took a step forward and charged at each other again. Their fists constantly collided, and the originally dim night sky became even darker. I thought you would be vulnerable, but the result seems to be beyond my expectations. Yi Tian smiled. Likewise. Qin Feiyang's eyes were burning with a trace of battle intent. Bang, bang, bang. The two of them were like lightning, exchanging blows again and again. In a dozen breaths, the two of them had collided hundreds of times. Their fists were broken, and drops of blood floated down. They seemed to be evenly matched. Zhuo Tianqing whispered. This is just a warm-up. The real battle has not started yet. The city lord said. Boom. About a few hundred minutes later, the two of them punched each other, and the terrifying force collided with each other. Puff. At that moment, both of them spat out a mouthful of blood, and retreated continuously. The warm-up should be enough. Qin Feiyang's battle intent was already boiling. Boom. The divine dragon seal appeared out of nowhere, and like a huge mountain, it shook the sky and pressed down on Yi Tian. Yi Tian looked at the divine dragon seal, and with the emergence of divine power, a giant dragon roared out, carrying a monstrous aura, and pounced on the divine dragon seal. The two great divine arts met, and the night sky suddenly fell into a dead silence. But the next moment, accompanied by an earth-shattering noise, the two great divine arts exploded in the void, and a destructive wave suddenly rolled out. The void above the entire city was distorted as if it was about to shatter. The enchantment set up by the city lord was also revealed under the impact of the wave. Fortunately, the two of them were outside the enchantment, otherwise Wind Sea City would definitely be destroyed. But before the storm subsided, accompanied by a dragon roar, giant dragons continued to rush into the sky, hovering above Yi Tian's head, exuding a monstrous dragon aura. Kill. As Yi Tian waved his hand, the sky full of giant dragons suddenly roared and pounced on Qin Feiyang. Each giant dragon was thousands of feet long, exuding an unparalleled aura. The people in the city below were unable to see the night sky, and could only see the densely packed giant dragons, seemingly endless. Chapter 3082. Supreme Level Divine Art. Everyone looked at this scene, their eyes full of shock. Although in the Sky Cloud realm, supreme level divine arts are very common, one must know that things of the same level are divided into strong and weak. And the supreme level divine art that Yi Tian used at this moment is undoubtedly the strongest. In other words, unless it's a heaven-defying divine art, no one can shake it. Clang. However, just when everyone thought that Qin Feiyang might be at a disadvantage, an ear-piercing sword cry sounded. Heaven-defying divine artifact? When everyone heard this sword cry, their first reaction was that Qin Feiyang used a heaven-defying divine artifact. That was because everyone knew that not only did Qin Feiyang possess a pinnacle-level heaven-defying divine artifact, he even snatched a pinnacle-level heaven-defying divine artifact from Yi Yuan. But when they looked, they found that it wasn't the golden scale sword or the magic sword, but a flaming sword shadow. Each sword shadow exuded a sharp aura that could tear the sky and split the earth. Kill. As Qin Feiyang pointed his finger, the sword shadows swept out and attacked the giant dragon. This? Everyone was surprised. It's actually the strongest supreme level divine art. It seems that this person has other means besides the heaven-defying divine artifact. Clang. The sword shadow cut through the sky. The blazing flame illuminated half the sky and slashed at the giant dragon. The sword was crying, and the dragon was howling. In just a few breaths, the two were shattered and disintegrated in the void, once again showing a situation of equal strength. Not bad. Yi Tian nodded. Same to you. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. With a wave of his hand, the 99 sword shadows reappeared and merged together, turning into a giant sword. The void was actually cracking. Although it wasn't very obvious, it was real. One must know. The void of the sky cloud realm is tougher than the ancient castle. Only a heaven-defying divine artifact and a heaven-defying divine art can shatter the void. And this sword shadow can actually shatter the void a little. What does this mean? It means that the power of the Gudyuan sword technique is infinitely close to a heaven-defying divine art. This is the strongest power of a supreme-level divine art. People muttered. But at this moment, Yi Tian waved his hand, and a series of dragon roars could be heard. One after another, huge dragons appeared and fused together to form a huge divine dragon. Rumble. The next moment, the divine dragon and the sword shadow collided fiercely. The sky changed color on the spot, and the cracks in the void became more and more obvious. Strong. Everyone's eyes trembled. Putting aside the heaven-defying divine artifact, heaven-defying divine technique, and the power of law, the strength of the two of them was completely enough to sweep across those in the same realm. It seems that I have really underestimated you. Yi Tian frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang as he asked. It's not too late to realize that. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. You are a very confident person, but I will ruthlessly destroy your confidence step by step. Yi Tian raised his arm and pointed his index finger in the air. A beam of golden divine light immediately gushed out. Heaven and earth instantly turned into a sea of gold. A terrifying destructive aura spread out in all directions. This is yet another terrifying supreme being level killing technique. After all, he is the eldest grandson of the Vice Alliance leader. How many Supreme Being level divine techniques would he have? Not to mention Supreme Being level divine techniques, he probably even has a heaven-defying divine artifact. Everyone discussed. Rumble. But at the same time, Qin Feiyang also raised his arm. An invisible force emerged and blasted toward the golden divine light like a turbulent torrent. Qin Feiyang also had a lot of Supreme Being level divine techniques. For example, the returning ruins art had now reached the peak of Supreme Being level. The two killing techniques collided, and a dazzling divine light burst out. Both of their bodies trembled slightly, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. But this kind of injury was nothing to people with strong physical bodies like them. Whoosh, whoosh. Qin Feiyang's eyes were sharp. As his divine power surged, the 3 forms of the Dragon God technique and the 4 forms of the Fire Phoenix technique instantly appeared. All kinds of super killing techniques were aimed at Yi Tian from all directions. But Yi Tian also evolved all kinds of super killing techniques to neutralize them one by one. At this time, the sky was full of all kinds of divine techniques colliding. The destructive fluctuations were like a rolling torrent, roaring in all directions. Whoosh. Suddenly, a streak of fiery red divine light shot out from Yi Tian's fingertips like an arrow, and actually shattered all the divine techniques like crushing dead leaves, instantly arriving in front of Qin Feiyang. This is... Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted, and he hurriedly dodged to the side. However, that streak of divine light still pierced through his shoulder, leaving behind a fist-sized bloody hole with blood gushing out. This seems to be the power of laws. Everyone looked at Yi Tian in shock. Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang opposite and shook his head as he said, "Relying on divine techniques alone can't determine the outcome. So bring out your full strength." Following his voice landing, fire law surged out, turning into numerous sharp blades, shattering the vast sky for millions of miles, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as they rushed toward Qin Feiyang. The power of laws already reached the heaven-defying level, so it could already shatter the void. Qin Feiyang's figure flickered continuously, dodging the numerous sharp blades that rushed over, his appearance looking somewhat wretched. Not good. Yi Tian has mastered the power of laws. Qin Feiyang is probably not his opponent. Zhuo Tiansheng transmitted his voice. Yeah. To fight against the power of laws, either he has to have a heaven-defying divine artifact and divine technique, or he has also mastered the power of laws. But until now, we still don't know whether he has comprehended the power of laws or not. Elder Yu secretly said, hiding a trace of worry in his eyes. Puff. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang, who couldn't dodge in time, was pierced through the chest by two sharp blades formed by the power of laws, and blood flowed out. If you haven't comprehended the power of laws, then you will definitely lose this battle. Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang indifferently. The fire law seemed to be endless, constantly turning into sharp blades that rushed toward Qin Feiyang. Although Qin Feiyang had a heaven-defying divine artifact, he wasn't worried at all, because as the eldest grandson of the Deputy Alliance leader, he didn't lack any heaven-defying divine artifacts at all. Qin Feiyang didn't answer, his eyes flickering. In fact, he was considering whether to activate the power of laws or not. There was a good saying, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Now that Madman had already displayed extraordinary talent, if he stood out again, it might not be a good thing. Clang. He hesitated again and again. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the golden scale sword appeared. With a slash of the sword, the sharpness was earth-shattering, instantly shattering all the laws of fire. Yes, he still planned to keep a low profile. He took out a heaven-defying divine artifact just like that? It seems that he hasn't comprehended the power of laws. If he hasn't comprehended the power of laws, then compared to Madman Mo, he's a little far behind. Everyone shook their heads, seemingly disappointed. Sigh. Yi Tian couldn't help but sigh, shaking his head. I thought you were an opponent, but I didn't expect that you haven't even comprehended the power of laws. Thank you for your high opinion, but whether I have comprehended the power of laws or not isn't that important right now. As long as I win this battle, it's fine. Qin Feiyang didn't care at all. Holding the golden scale sword, he took a step forward, and the sharpness instantly tore through the sky. Clang. But also at the same time, Yi Tian raised his hand, and a 3-foot-long sword appeared, as if it was made of gold, flickering with dazzling sword light. This was also a peak-level heaven-defying divine artifact. The two heaven-defying divine artifacts collided, and the terrifying sharpness tore apart the sky. Yi Tian also has a peak-level heaven-defying divine artifact, as well as the power of laws, and his cultivation is even at the great perfection imperishable stage. On the other hand, Qin Feiyang has no advantage except for the heaven-defying divine artifact. We shouldn't have counted on him. If the person who appeared this time was Madman Mo, how good would that be? Everyone shook their heads. Qin Feiyang didn't know what everyone was thinking, because facing Yi Tian, he didn't have time to care about these things. Yi Tian's strength was much more terrifying than he imagined, and if he didn't show mercy, he would die in this person's hands. Therefore, he had to deal with it with all his strength. The two heaven-defying divine artifacts were evenly matched, but Qin Feiyang seemed to be in an extremely sorry state under the suppression of Yi Tian's power of laws. The injuries on his body continued to worsen. A trace of disdain gradually appeared on Yi Tian's face. He was a little depressed. Why waste time on this kind of person? Suddenly, killing intent flashed in his eyes. This was the first time he showed killing intent. This also proved that he had lost his patience, and didn't want to continue playing this kind of game. The next moment, the law of fire surged out and turned into a 3-foot-long battle blade, carrying a world-destroying sharpness, and slashed towards Qin Feiyang. Not good, this is the first profound, the blade of fire. Zhuo Tianqing's pupils contracted. It's indeed not good. But I really don't believe that Qin Feiyang only has this much ability. The city lord secretly thought. While the two were talking, the blade of fire fiercely slashed on Qin Feiyang's body, but a loud clang sounded. What? The two looked in surprise and found that a set of blood-red armor had appeared on Qin Feiyang's body at some point. What was more terrifying was that the blood-red armor didn't have any damage in the face of such a fierce bombardment. Is this also a heaven-defying divine artifact? Everyone was shocked. Yi Tian also looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. If you look down on me without the law of fire, then I'll really laugh at your naivety. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Tian and said indifferently. Is that so? Yi Tian raised his arm and pointed in the air. The law of fire suddenly turned into a raging wave and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang shook his head and raised his hand to slap the air. What is he doing? That's the law of fire. No matter how strong his body is, it's impossible to block it. Isn't he courting death? Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Feiyang fought with Yi Tian because of them, they would definitely call him an idiot on the spot. Zhuo Tianxing and the other two were even more anxious. Could it be that this kid had run out of tricks and could only fight with Yi Tian? No one was optimistic about Qin Feiyang's chances. The same went for Yi Tian. The law of fire instantly arrived. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was about to be drowned by the law of fire, there were even some people who closed their eyes, unable to bear to watch the bloody scene. And at this moment, at the center of Qin Feiyang's palm, a dazzling golden light suddenly surged out. At the center of the palm that was enveloped by the golden light, the word return appeared. Boom. In the next moment, the golden light was like a flood that opened a dam, blasting towards the law of fire. Accompanied by a loud bang, under everyone's incredulous gaze, the law of fire was blocked by the golden light. Chapter 3083. How is this possible? There was a trace of shock in Yi Tian's eyes. What is this thing that can actually block the power of law? Give me a taste of my own medicine. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang shouted in a low voice. The golden light was dazzling, and an even more shocking scene appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The power of law actually revolved in the air and surged towards Yi Tian like a surging torrent. This is a magic trick. Everyone was stunned to the extreme. However, in an instant, Yi Tian was drowned in the power of law. This was also something he never expected and was completely unprepared. The power of law exuded a terrifying aura, and Yi Tian was instantly covered in wounds and dripping with blood. However, he was after all at the great perfection imperishable stage, so he quickly reacted and hurriedly retreated. Cold sweat trickled down his spine. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough, otherwise he would definitely end up with his body crushed. The power of law is not omnipotent. Qin Feiyang shook his head and took a step forward. The battle armor formed by the battle secret art flashed with dazzling divine light as he punched at Yi Tian. Whether it is omnipotent or not depends on whether your comprehension of the power of law is deep enough. Yi Tian snorted coldly and slapped out with his palm. The fist and palm met in an instant, and Yi Tian was blasted away on the spot, blood gushing out. The battle secret art could block 90% of the attack power. In other words, now Qin Feiyang only needed to bear 10% of the damage, but Yi Tian was different. He had to bear Qin Feiyang's full-strength punch. The gap between the two was pulled apart in an instant. Bang bang bang. Qin Feiyang was like a god of war, and the power of his body poured out like a tide. In just a few breaths, Yi Tian was seriously injured, and his face was pale. Show me what you've got. Qin Feiyang, who had the battle secret art to protect his body, did not leave the slightest scar on his body. Finally, a little interesting. Yi Tian got up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and the law of fire emerged like a waterfall. The first profound blade of fire was activated again. Clang! The blade of fire carried a monstrous sharpness as it charged towards Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang struck out with his palm. Golden light burst out, and the word return appeared on his palm. Rumble! In an instant, the golden light collided with the blade of fire. With a deafening explosion, the blade of fire shattered. But at the same time, the golden light also disintegrated. Qin Feiyang's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. A trace of bewilderment crept into his eyes. What's going on? It actually didn't bounce back. In this situation, they were completely evenly matched, so it's just a low-level heaven-defying technique. Yi Tian shook his head. He's also a subordinate, Qin Feiyang murmured. Was this the true level of the six-word divine formula? He had always thought that the six-word divine formula was very powerful. It should at least be at the pinnacle level, or even the legendary level. But he didn't expect it to be a low-level heaven-defying divine art. Clang! Just as he was in a daze, the blade of fire appeared again and struck him like a bolt of lightning. By the time he regained his senses, it was already too late to dodge. Crack! The battle armor formed by the battle formula also cracked on the spot. His whole body was also sent flying, blood splattering all over his body. This is just a low-level heaven-defying artifact, Yi Tian said. Qin Feiyang looked at the cracked battle armor, and for a moment, he really couldn't accept it. Suddenly, he raised his head to look at Yi Tian, murderous intent surging from his palm, and a blood-colored long sword appeared. He wanted to see how powerful the blood-colored long sword was. There's another heaven-defying artifact? Yi Tian was surprised. The law of fire emerged, and the blade of fire attacked Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang slashed with his sword. Clang! The two divine weapons collided with a loud bang. Immediately after, under Qin Feiyang's shocked gaze, the blade of fire and the blood-colored long sword were destroyed together. Obviously, their strength was still equal. It's also a subordinate. Qin Feiyang looked at the shattered blood-colored long sword in his hand. This fact was a big blow to him. It seems that before, you still didn't know the true level of your heaven-defying techniques. Just now, you relied on these heaven-defying techniques to suppress me because I didn't activate the profound divine ability. The lethality of the law of fire is indeed not comparable to the heaven-defying techniques. But the profound divine ability is different. The first profound divine ability is equivalent to a low-level heaven-defying technique, Yi Tian said faintly. When Qin Feiyang heard this, it was as if he was suddenly enlightened. That's right. After the golden scale sword shattered the blade of fire, Yi Tian didn't activate the profound divine ability again, and only used the pure law of fire. There was an essential difference between the law of fire and the profound divine ability. The law of fire itself was just a kind of energy, while the profound divine ability was a move evolved from the law of fire. In fact, in short, it was the same principle as the divine power and the divine ability. The divine power itself wasn't strong, but the divine ability transformed from the divine power was strong. It was equivalent to saying that the law of fire was equivalent to the divine power, and the profound divine ability was equivalent to the divine ability. However, he still couldn't accept that the six-word divine art was only a low-level heaven-defying technique. In the past, whether it was in the Great Qin Empire or the ancient world, the six-word divine art had always been invincible. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying aura emerged. Qin Feiyang raised his head to look, and saw a sea of lightning appear above Yi Tian's head. It was formed by the law of fire. Bolts of fire and lightning roared like giant pythons, emitting a monstrous aura. This is the second profound fire god's fury. The city lord murmured. Shuo Tianqing's eyelids twitched, and he looked at Qin Feiyang and muttered, "Is this really all you can do? How are you going to break it this time?" Yi Tian opened his mouth, and as his voice fell, the sky full of fire and lightning suddenly fell, blasting toward Qin Feiyang. Clang! Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the blood-red sword appeared again, directly attacking the fire and lightning. He still couldn't believe it. Gotcha. However, in the face of the second profound, the blood-red sword formed by the kill-word divine art had no power to resist and instantly shattered. It's really just a lower grade. The second profound was equivalent to a mid-grade heaven-defying divine art. The blood-red sword couldn't withstand a single blow from the second profound. If it wasn't a lower-grade heaven-defying divine art, then what was it? But why was it like this? The six-word divine art that had always been successful seemed so weak when it came to the sky cloud realm? Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang frowned. It seemed that it wasn't the six-word divine art that had always been successful, but the slaughter domain. That's right. It was the slaughter domain. In the past, whether it was facing the dragons or the various heaven-defying artifacts, it was the slaughter domain that solved it. In other words, the slaughter domain was the strongest, not the six-word divine art. There was one more point. That was the madman's heaven-defying divine art. Qin Feiyang and the madman had sparred before. The six-word divine art and the madman's heaven-defying divine art were similar in strength. Not long ago, the battle between the madman and Yi Yuan had already proved that the madman's heaven-defying divine art was a lower grade. Since the madman's heaven-defying divine art was a lower grade, then the six-word divine art was naturally a lower grade. He should have thought of this a long time ago. Back to the Sky Cloud Realm. It was different here. In the Sky Cloud Realm, whether it was a heaven-defying divine art or a heaven-defying artifact, there was a clear division of grades. Low, mid-grade, high-grade, peak, legendary, supreme. These didn't exist in the ancient realm. Moreover, in the ancient realm, other than the low-grade heaven-defying artifacts, there weren't any higher-grade heaven-defying artifacts. Therefore, in the ancient realm, there was no comparison. This made Qin Feiyang, who had just arrived in the Sky Cloud Realm, have an illusion that the six-word divine art was invincible in the ancient realm. In fact, it wasn't. Only the slaughter domain was truly invincible. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile on his face. It really came true that when you haven't come into contact with something of a higher level, you will never know how naive and insignificant you are. It was already confirmed that the six-word divine art was a low-grade heaven-defying divine art. However, after thinking of this, Qin Feiyang wasn't very disappointed with this result. Because along the way, the six-word divine art had already helped him a lot. Even if it ended their mission now, he was already very satisfied. Besides, wasn't there still the slaughter domain? The power of the slaughter domain was obvious to all. It was a terrifying killing technique comparable to a sovereign divine weapon. This was also the true trump card that made him invincible. Perhaps, just as they guessed, the return, battle, and attainment divine arts weren't weak in themselves. Perhaps it was just that Qin Feiyang hadn't discovered them yet. It seemed that he really had to find some time to properly comprehend these heaven-defying divine arts, and see if there was a terrifying killing technique like the slaughter domain hidden in them. What is he doing? What else can he do? The heaven-defying divine art is useless. The heaven-defying artifact is also restrained by Yi Tian's heaven-defying artifact. He is now at his wit's end. He's just waiting for death. Everyone shook their heads in disappointment. It seemed that they had overestimated this person. Rumble. Crack. In the blink of an eye, the lightning formed by the fire lightning was about to strike. Qin Feiyang finally regained his senses. He took a deep breath and calmed the fluctuations in his heart. He raised his head and looked at the lightning that was whistling toward him. He originally wanted to use the six-word divine art to end this battle, but it seemed that it was impossible. As for the slaughter domain, this trump card, he definitely wouldn't use it unless it was a matter of life and death. Because every time he used it, he would need the people of the Black Tortoise world to help him donate blood. The people of the Black Tortoise world were his people, not blood donation machines. Qin Feiyang, if you can't do it, run. The city lord couldn't help but remind him. Run, Qin Feiyang muttered. He swept his gaze across the people in the city below, and finally noticed the disappointed expressions on their faces. There was even a hint of disdain for him. Sigh. I came to help out of kindness. Why am I being disdained? Just because I didn't comprehend the power of law. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel miserable. It was indeed difficult to be a good person. He had already made up his mind. After this matter was over, he would no longer care about these other people's business. What did the life and death of these people have to do with him? Boom. The lightning that filled the sky finally descended, instantly drowning Qin Feiyang. We were too naive. We actually pinned our hopes on him. If only it was Madman Mo, he would definitely be able to decide the outcome with Yi Tian. Everyone shook their heads. That kind of disdain in their eyes was already undisguised. Because in their opinion, Qin Feiyang was already dead for sure. This also proved that these people were indeed not worth helping. Even if Qin Feiyang was no match and died at Yi Tian's hands, shouldn't they at least be sad? After all, Qin Feiyang had appeared for them. But not only was he not sad, but he also had a look of disdain. What was this? In the entire Winxi city, there were so many people. Only the city lord Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu felt sad in their hearts, but they didn't dare to show it. Chapter 3084. He looked at Yi Tian again. He glanced at the void that was covered in lightning, and turned to open an altar. Yes. He also thought that Qin Feiyang was dead for sure. He didn't want to see the result, and was ready to leave. This wasn't contempt but confidence. He was confident that the second profound could kill Qin Feiyang. Boom. However, when the altar was opened, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the void that was covered in lightning. Yi Tian turned around and looked at the void suspiciously. Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two were shocked. Could it be that he didn't die? Immediately, he stared fixedly at the void. The eyes of the others were also filled with bewilderment. You don't even want to see the result. How confident are you? Qin Feiyang's voice came from the lightning. He really didn't die. Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two looked at each other. This kid wasn't as simple as they thought. At the same time, Yi Tian furrowed his brows without a trace. Boom. The aura became stronger and stronger, and the lightning that shrouded the void began to be annihilated. Suddenly, purple divine thunder roared out from the thunderbolts, exuding a destructive power. This is Yi Tian's pupils contracted. This aura seems to be the law of lightning. Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but exclaim. What? The law of lightning? He mastered the law of lightning. Everyone looked at the purple divine lightning in disbelief. This person that they had always despised actually mastered the law of lightning? Crack! The purple divine lightning became more and more terrifying. It was as if a heavenly tribulation had descended, shattering everything. Boom! The next moment, accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the lightning formed by the fire lightning was instantly annihilated. Qin Feiyang immediately appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, purple divine lightning roared around him. He was holding a purple hammer in his hand. Lightning surrounded it, exuding a destructive aura. At this moment, he was like the god of lightning. The law of lightning shook the heavens. It really is the law of lightning. The city lord murmured. He suddenly glanced at the hammer in Qin Feiyang's hand and exclaimed, "This is the second profound of the law of lightning, the hammer of lightning." The second profound? How is this possible? Not only has he grasped the power of law, but he has also comprehended the second profound? Everyone's eyes widened in anger and disbelief. Was this his true strength? The law of lightning. The second profound. Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang and the Mjolnir with surprise in his eyes. He shook his head and said, "You really hid your strength well. There's no other way. I didn't want to reveal too much of my strength, but your strength has somewhat exceeded my expectations." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Should I be happy or angry to hear that? Because you're obviously looking down on me." Yi Tian frowned. Qin Feiyang didn't answer. Holding the Thunder God's hammer, he took a step forward. The Thunder God's hammer was the second profound divine ability of the law of thunder. Its power was equivalent to a mid-grade heaven-defying divine technique. As the hammer fell, the void around Yi Tian immediately collapsed. But at the same time, Yi Tian waved his hand and another law of law appeared. However, it wasn't the law of fire, but another law of earth that he had grasped. Clang! As the law of earth appeared, a hammer the size of a human face appeared in his hand. The hammer was usually yellow in color, and shone with divine light. This is the second profound of the law of earth, the hammer of earth. He really has grasped two kinds of law of thunder. No wonder he's a famous monster in the eastern continent. The law of earth, the law of fire. He has grasped two kinds of law of thunder, while Qin Feiyang only has one kind of law of thunder. Moreover, it's said that Yi Tian has comprehended the third profound of the law of earth. So let's not have too much hope. Everyone muttered softly. Clang! The two profound collided with a loud bang, creating a destructive shockwave that shattered the void above the city. Even the outside of the city was affected. Mountains and rivers collapsed crazily, and the earth trembled, cracked, and sank. It was like the end of the world. In less than 10 breaths, Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian had fought thousands of rounds, and it was difficult to tell who had the upper hand. Very strong. But I have also grasped the third profound. Yi Tian's aura surged into the sky, and the law of earth surged up like a waterfall. In the next moment, a huge divine seal appeared. It was more than 10,000 feet tall, and it was like a towering mountain. It emitted a monstrous aura and suppressed Qin Fei Yang. Not good. This is the third profound, the seal of earth. The city lord exclaimed. Shatter. Yi Tian roared. The third profound, huh? Qin Fei Yang murmured. He pointed at the sky, and the law of thunder surged out. In the sky, one after another, lightning dragons appeared out of nowhere. Roar. Along with a loud dragon roar, all the lightning dragons merged and turned into a huge dragon. It carried a shocking dragon aura, and pounced on the seal of earth. What? Yi Tian's eyes widened. Oh my god, he has also comprehended the third profound of the law of thunder. This guy is really hiding his strength. Zhuo Tianxing exclaimed, feeling that his heart was about to jump out. As for the people in the city below, they were so shocked that their mouths were wide open. They did not expect that Qin Fei Yang not only grasped the law of thunder, but also comprehended the third profound. At this moment, thinking of the disdain they had for Qin Fei Yang before, they couldn't help but feel ashamed. He just wanted to keep a low profile, so he didn't show his law of thunder. But what about them? They actually talked about right and wrong again and again. Wasn't this the behavior of a clown? Moreover, he only appeared to help them. What was the difference between them and being ungrateful like this? Roar. Clang. High in the sky, the shield of earth shone brightly. The lightning dragon roared and shook the sky. In the end, the two profound abilities collided together. The world suddenly lost its color. The void above the city turned into chaos in an instant. The terrifying battle fluctuations spread millions of miles away, and everywhere there was a scene of heaven and earth collapsing. So scary. Who is fighting? The fierce beasts in the mountains outside the city, as well as those who were training in the mountains, all soared into the sky, looking in the direction of Wind Sea City in surprise. In the chaotic zone, Qin Fei Yang and Yi Tian's figures intertwined, crazily colliding. Destructive auras constantly roared out. Yi Tian didn't dare to be careless and went all out. Swish. About a moment later, Yi Tian's speed suddenly skyrocketed, and he instantly appeared behind Qin Fei Yang. He raised the hammer of earth and smashed it towards Qin Fei Yang's head. Heaven-defying support technique? Qin Fei Yang was shocked and hurriedly used the walkward technique, narrowly avoiding it. He also grasped the heaven-defying support technique. Yi Tian was slightly stunned, then shook his head and said, "But it's just a lower level." Swish. He took another step forward, and his speed was many times faster than Qin Fei Yang's walkward technique. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Qin Fei Yang again, and smashed the hammer of earth madly. At this critical moment, Qin Fei Yang activated his first profound, the thunder armor. Crack. After all, the hammer of earth was the second profound. The thunder armor instantly shattered, and Qin Fei Yang flew out like a meteor, his back badly mutilated. Although the thunder armor wasn't as powerful as the hammer of earth, it still helped Qin Fei Yang block the fatal blow. He was only injured but not killed. Qin Fei Yang waved his hand, and a life-divine pill with 7 dragon core chi appeared, and he swallowed it in one gulp. But at the same time, blade of fire, fury of the fire god, hammer of earth, seal of earth. Following Yi Tian's roar, the 4 profundities of law appeared simultaneously and blasted towards Qin Fei Yang. Qin Fei Yang suddenly turned around, and the law of thunder roared in all directions. The 2 profound abilities, the thunder god's hammer and the fury of thunder, were instantly formed. At the same time, a surge of light energy appeared. This is... Zhuo Tianxing and the others were shocked again. Clang. With the appearance of the power of light, 2 long swords appeared out of thin air. They were the 2 profound laws of light, the sword of light and the sword of judgment. He also has the law of light, and he has already comprehended the second profound. That means Qin Fei Yang's talent isn't any worse than Yi Tian's. The city lord and the others looked at each other, and they were extremely shocked. Qin Fei Yang had the third profound of the law of thunder, and the second profound of the law of light. Yi Tian had the third profound of the law of earth, and the second profound of the law of fire. Putting aside the worldly possessions, such as heaven-defying divine weapons and techniques, the two of them were on par in terms of talent and comprehension. No. If one were to really calculate, Qin Feiyang was even more terrifying than Yi Tian, because Qin Feiyang had only just reached the imperishable realm, and Yi Tian had already reached the peak of the imperishable realm. When Qin Feiyang also broke through to the peak of the imperishable realm, his achievements would definitely be higher than Yi Tian's. Monster. Just like little madman, he was also a real monster. At the same time, the people of Wind Sea City only realized at this moment what kind of person they despised. The shame in their hearts was even more intense, and they couldn't help but want to find a hole to hide in. Clang. Boom. Sword of light, sword of judgment, fury of thunder, hammer of thunder, for profound supernatural powers, blade of fire, fury of fire, hammer of earth, seal of earth, for profound supernatural powers. In an instant, they suddenly blasted together. Immediately, a wave of air even more terrifying than before rolled out. The enchantment set up by the city lord began to distort. Puff. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian's bodies shook, and at the same time, they spat out a mouthful of blood and couldn't help but retreat. Too strong. In terms of law power alone, Qin Feiyang isn't weaker than Yi Tian at all. Qin Feiyang, madman Mo. What kind of monsters are these? Just reached the imperishable realm, and their comprehension of law power is so deep. Mo Lu Sun Jingzhong had been standing in front of the window watching the battle, and his heart was incomparably shocked. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or madman, they were still just children in front of him. But the two's comprehension of the power of laws left him in the dust. Although he had completely comprehended several kinds of law power, this was after reaching the peak of the imperishable realm. When he was at Qin Feiyang's and madman's age and cultivation level, he couldn't even comprehend the power of law, let alone the third profound divine ability. So, for Qin Feiyang and madman, he could only use the word monster to describe them. Chapter 3. Release at 10. Chapter 3085. Sigh. Suddenly, a sigh sounded beside Sun Jingzhong. Who is it? Sun Jingzhong was startled and quickly turned his head to look. His expression suddenly froze. Unknowingly, an old man in a fiery red robe had appeared at the side. Who else could it be but Elder Hua? Elder Hua, when did you appear? Sun Jingzhong looked at him in shock. Elder Hua said, I appeared a long time ago, but you were too engrossed in the battle and didn't notice me. Sun Jingzhong smiled bitterly. How can I not be engrossed in such an exciting battle? That's true. Elder Hua nodded. Then why are you sighing? Sun Jingzhong was suspicious. I was mocking myself. Elder Hua shook his head. Mocking yourself? Sun Jingzhong was stunned. That's right. At first, I thought that Qin Feiyang should be a talent just like Lunatic. But I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, Lunatic would display amazing strength and talent. Then, I thought that Lunatic was a talent and Qin Feiyang might be ordinary, just relying on external things. But now, this kid has also displayed amazing potential. If I can't even see through two young people, what do I need this pair of eyes for? Elder Ho was extremely angry. Cough cough. Sun Jingzhong coughed dryly and said, It's not your fault, they hit it too well. Hit it too well. The corner of Elder Ho's mouth twitched. He really knew how to comfort people. Buzz. Suddenly, the voice transmission stone rang. Elder Ho frowned and took out the voice transmission stone. A shadow appeared. Chu Yin. Old bastard, come back quickly. Chu Yin shouted anxiously. What's wrong? Elder Ho frowned. Those bastards from the Blood Hall actually brought the sovereign divine weapon to our demon hall. Chu Yin said angrily. What? Sun Jingzhong was shocked. Elder Ho raised his eyebrows and said, The Blood Hall is very arrogant, but they're not that arrogant. It's true. Chu Yin said. Okay. Don't worry, I'll go back right away. Elder Ho comforted Sun Jingzhong before turning off the divine sound transmission stone. He looked at Sun Jingzhong and said, I'll leave this to you. You must ensure the safety of Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo, yes. Sun Jingzhong nodded. Above the city, violent winds whistled. and the fluctuations formed from the energy of the laws surged like waves. Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian stood in the air, their eyes burning with fighting spirit. I apologize. Yi Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at Qin Feiyang. Why? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. I underestimated you. You are qualified to be my opponent, Yi Tian said. But I won't feel honored. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Doesn't matter. In any case, you must die here today. Not only you, but also Madman Mo. Yi Tian's tone was flat, but it was as if he was announcing a death sentence. Die here? I'm afraid it's very difficult. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Haha. Yi Tian laughed loudly. Swish. Suddenly, he took a step forward, and the heaven-defying auxiliary technique from before reappeared, instantly landing behind Qin Feiyang. Since we've already fought to this point, then I won't hide anymore. Go all out. As soon as he finished speaking, he slapped at Qin Feiyang's back. Qin Feiyang hurriedly dodged. However, Yi Tian's speed was so fast that even he couldn't catch it. In just an instant, Yi Tian appeared in front of him and slammed a palm on his chest. Puff. Qin Feiyang was immediately sent flying, spurting blood. This is a peak heaven-defying auxiliary technique, Yi Tian said faintly. He took another step forward and appeared behind Qin Feiyang. He raised his arm and pointed his finger in the air. A divine force swept out like lightning and pierced through Qin Feiyang's back, leaving behind a blood puppet. Too fast. I can't keep up at all. Qin Feiyang felt a lot of pressure. In a battle of this level, speed was crucial. Yi Tian's current speed completely crushed him. Swish. Yi Tian attacked again. Qin Feiyang's body shook, and an invisible force rolled out in all directions like a tide. Soul destruction technique. No matter how fast Yi Tian was, it was impossible for him to guard against such a sudden soul destruction technique. As expected, Yi Tian was immediately drowned by the invisible force. Yi Tian was suddenly shocked, and a trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. But then, a golden light emerged from his body, and a golden bead appeared above his head. The golden light shrouded and blocked the invisible force. I didn't expect you to have mastered the soul destruction technique. Yi Tian raised his eyebrows. I also didn't expect you to have a heaven-defying artifact to protect your divine soul. Qin Feiyang said. That's right. That golden bead was a divine artifact, and it was a high-level heaven-defying artifact. Otherwise, it would be enough to erase Yi Tian's divine soul in an instant. You're really a terrifying person. Yi Tian shook his head. When fighting with this person, the slightest carelessness could erase one's divine soul. One must know. Once the divine soul is erased, even if you have a heaven-defying ability, it would be useless. Same to you. Qin Feiyang smiled, but he was a little irritated. With a heaven-defying artifact to protect the divine soul, the soul destruction technique was useless. How could he deal with Yi Tian's speed? Swish. Yi Tian attacked again, and Qin Feiyang was seriously injured again. He could only try his best to protect his vital points. For example, his Sea of Consciousness and Sea of Qi. Because if his Sea of Consciousness and Sea of Qi were destroyed, this battle would basically be over. Struggle slowly. Enjoy the last moment of despair. Yi Tian was like a ghost, coming and going without a trace. Every time he appeared, there would be a bloody hole in Qin Feiyang's body. The golden scale sword and Yi Tian's heaven-defying artifact were also locked in a fierce battle in the sky, unable to lend a helping hand. About 10 breaths passed. Qin Feiyang's body was already full of holes, except for his head and lower abdomen. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind. It was also at this moment. Yi Tian attacked again, aiming straight at Qin Feiyang's forehead. Swish. But just as Qin Feiyang was about to die, Qin Feiyang suddenly disappeared in front of Yi Tian. Yi Tian hurriedly scanned the surroundings. There was actually no one. But the next moment, a fatal crisis came from behind. Without any hesitation, the Law of Earth appeared, and a suit of armor shining with divine light appeared. The first profound meaning of the Law of Earth, Armor of Earth. Almost at the same time as the armor of earth appeared, a blood-colored long sword appeared from the void and slashed at Yi Tian's back. Clang! Yi Tian immediately flew out, blood gushing out. The armor of earth on his body also shattered. But with the armor of earth, this sword did not cause a fatal injury to him, because the armor of earth also had an extremely astonishing defensive power. Your reaction is really fast. Qin Feiyang walked out of the void. He thought that this sword could catch Yi Tian off guard, but he did not expect this person's reaction to be so fast. Yi Tian stabilized his body, turned to look at Qin Feiyang and frowned. A stealth technique? How many tricks are you hiding? More than you can imagine. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, with a thought, 1,000 incarnations appeared and immediately scattered, surrounding Yi Tian in the center. This was the first time he had activated 3,000 incarnations after entering the Sky Cloud realm. However, he also had some reservations. After all, he still had to face more and stronger opponents in the future, so he could not expose all his strength at once. Just a few incarnations. What can they do? Yi Tian looked around at the incarnations and could not help but frown. Incarnations? Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and shouted. Activate the profound law. Boom. Clang. The 1,000 incarnations' bodies shook, and the power of the law suddenly surged out. Sword of light, sword of judgment, hammer of thunder, fury of thunder. The 4 profound supernatural powers were all evolved. How is this possible? Yi Tian looked at this scene in shock. Below, the 3 city lords, Sun Jingzhong, and the people in the city were all staring with anger. The incarnations actually also mastered the power of the law, and could even activate the profound supernatural powers? To hell with it. How is this possible? Kill him. One of the incarnations suddenly roared. He can even give orders. These incarnations, do they all have their own consciousness? No, this is too outrageous. Incarnations are incarnations. It is impossible for them to have their own independent consciousness. Everyone's heart was full of confusion. What was going on? Even the people of the Sky Cloud realm felt that the 3,000 incarnations were extremely new and unbelievable. Clang! Following the incarnation's roar, the 1,000 incarnations and the 4,000 profound supernatural powers suddenly rushed toward Yi Tian. They were densely packed and sealed off all directions, making it impossible for Yi Tian to dodge. A trace of panic finally appeared on his face. In the face of this kind of omnidirectional attack, no matter how fast he was, it was useless. Boom. He evolved the profound supernatural powers and blasted them forward. But how could the 4 profound supernatural powers compete with the 4,000 profound supernatural powers? His 4 profound supernatural powers were like a small stone thrown into the sea, directly shattering. But it was not useless. Testing the waters of the 4 great profound divine abilities made him discover a shocking situation. The profound supernatural powers of these incarnations were not the slightest bit weaker than Qin Feiyang's. Were they really incarnations? He would rather believe that they were Qin Feiyang's twin brothers, although this was even more outrageous. This must be his trump card. Terrifying, really terrifying. If his cultivation was the same as ours, I'm afraid even we wouldn't be his opponent. The city lord exclaimed. Yes. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he made a move, it brought us shock after shock. Like Yi Tian asked, how many more of these tricks does he have? Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianxing looked at this scene with a shocked expression. But they were secretly communicating, but the shock on their faces was undisguised. Because this was uncontrollable. After all, the methods Qin Feiyang displayed were indeed shocking. Even if the deputy leader was present, he would be the same as them. Profound supernatural powers filled the sky like meteors. Who had seen such a spectacular scene before? In the sky. Previously, it was the golden scale sword that wanted to support Qin Feiyang, but now it was Yi Tian's turn to support Yi Tian. But how could the golden scale sword let it escape? Yi Tian's current situation was precarious. Chapter 3086. Boom. But suddenly, a terrifying aura emerged. Following closely, a sword light descended from the sky. easily cutting off the golden scale sword and Yi Tian's heaven-defying artifact. That sword light seemed to split the heavens and earth, tearing the chaos into two halves. And Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian immediately looked up, their eyes filled with shock. Two pinnacle heaven-defying artifacts were actually so vulnerable? At the same time, Zhuo Tianxing and the other two, Sun Jingzhong, and everyone in the city also looked up at the sword light in horror. Clang. After the sword light cut off the two heaven-defying artifacts, it went straight for Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian below. The speed was unbelievably fast. That edge was even more overwhelming, and the profound divine ability evolved by 1,000 incarnations was immediately destroyed in the void. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Yi Tian, they all felt a fatal threat. Who? Yi Tian said angrily. However, no one answered. The sword light rushed over crazily. This is the sword light of a supreme heaven-defying artifact, comparable to the existence of a great perfection dominator. Quickly retreat. Yi Tian hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang and roared. What? So strong? Qin Feiyang's expression changed abruptly. But just as the two of them were about to escape, a mysterious force emerged out of thin air, and the two of them immediately stood in the void motionless. That way, it was as if time had stopped. At the same time, the sword light rushed over. The edge tore the heavens and split the earth, and even the enchantment set up by the city lord was shattering. Quickly help. Otherwise, Wind Sea City will be razed to the ground. The city lord came back to his senses and hurriedly shouted. Whoosh! At that moment, the city lord, Zhuo Tianxing, and Elder Yu rushed out of the enchantment, and their divine power roared out, blasting towards the sword light. However, it was useless. Not only was it useless, the joint attack of the three was like a dead tree, unable to withstand a single blow, and was instantly shattered by the sword light. Swish! It was also at this moment. Sun Jingzhong appeared. The aura of a great perfection dominator completely erupted. Looking at the city lord and the other two, he shouted, again. Of the four people, two were Great Perfection Dominator Realm, and two Great Perfection Dominator Realm. They had completely comprehended several types of law profound. For a moment, all kinds of profound divine skills appeared, and attacked the sword light. However, it was useless. The difference of one minor realm in the sovereign realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. All the profound divine abilities were shattered. The four of them spat out a mouthful of blood and were sent flying. Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianxing's injuries were the heaviest. Because their cultivations were weaker than the two of them, their faces were deathly pale. Supreme grade heaven-defying divine artifact. There aren't many artifacts of this level in the entire eastern continent. Who exactly is it? Sun Jingzhong roared. But still no one answered. In the sky, Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian remained motionless, as if they hadn't noticed anything. This is the law of time. Time stop. The city lord exclaimed. Quick, break the time stop. Sun Jingzhong shouted. Before Elder Hu left, he had instructed him to ensure Qin Feiyang's safety. If something were to happen, how would he explain it to Elder Hua? In the meantime, the mayor, Elder Yu, and Zhuo Tianxing didn't dare to let anything happen to Yi Tian. Yi Yuan had already died in Wind Sea City. If Yi Tian were to die here, then the Vice Alliance Master wouldn't let them off easily. The four of them attacked again, but this time, their target wasn't the sword light, but the law of time that enveloped Qin Feiyang and Zhuo Tianxing. However, the law of time was one of the strongest laws in the world. To compete with the law of time, one must use the law of time, law of causality, law of life, or law of nothingness. Although the four of them had mastered several law of time, none of them were comparable to the law of time. They couldn't shake it at all. Moreover, they guessed that the cultivation of the person in the dark should have reached the perfection sovereign realm. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feiyang and Zhuo Tianxing, who were frozen in the void, were about to lose their lives under the sword light. Clang! At this moment, the ancient castle appeared. A mighty divine aura emerged, and the time stop was immediately broken. Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian immediately recovered. Let's go! Qin Feiyang immediately looked at the ancient castle and shouted. Yi Tian, the city lord, and the others looked at the ancient castle in surprise. What kind of artifact was this? It could actually break the other party's law of time? The ancient castle shook in the void, and immediately swept up Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian, escaping into the air. Don't even think about it. However, at this moment, a murderous roar rang out. Clang. The next moment, a long sword that looked like it was condensed from ice shot out from the void. This is the Ice Dragon's sacred sword. Qin Feiyang was shocked and angry. That's right. It's the original body. The Ice Dragon's sacred sword laughed and instantly recovered, its sharpness enveloping the world. Crack. Wuxia City's enchantment shattered on the spot. Sun Jingzhong, the city lord, and the other two were also dripping with blood under that sharpness. The four of them hurriedly retreated to the top of the city, divine power rolling out, and roared, quickly escape the city. At that moment, everyone in the city quivered and hurriedly fled out of the city. But with the strength of the four of them, how could they block the sharpness of the Ice Dragon's sacred sword? One had to know. The Ice Dragon's sacred sword was a sovereign divine weapon. The strength of the four was annihilated in an instant, and the sharpness was like a torrent, surging towards the city below. This is a sovereign divine weapon. The young master and the city lord's eyes trembled, and they couldn't help but feel despair. But at this moment, a mighty divine power emerged, covering the entire Wuxia city in an instant, blocking the sharpness of the Ice Dragon's sacred sword. What? Everyone looked at the ancient castle in shock. What are you still standing there for? Run as far as you can. Sun Jingzhong roared. Everyone quivered and continued to flee out of the city. Sun Jingzhong, the city lord, and the other two also frantically fled out of the city. But inside, they couldn't calm down. It was too unbelievable. The ancient castle was also a sovereign divine weapon. In the sky, Yi Tian also looked at Qin Feiyang and the ancient castle with a face of surprise. Sovereign divine weapons, even in the entire sky cloud realm, were few and far between. And as the deputy alliance leader, Zhang Sun also knew a little about the sovereign divine weapons of the major forces. But now he realized that he didn't know about the two sovereign divine weapons in front of him. You're still not leaving? Qin Feiyang roared. Yi Tian came back to his senses, took a deep look at Qin Feiyang, turned around, and fled into the air. But at this moment, the Ice Dragon's sacred sword attacked. Yi Tian's face changed, and he hurriedly ran to Qin Feiyang's side. He had no choice. The power of the sovereign divine weapon was enough to shatter his bones in an instant. Even if he hid in the space divine object, it would be useless, because no space divine object could block the power of the sovereign divine weapon. So, he could only follow Qin Feiyang and stay under the protection of the ancient castle to ensure his safety. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows at Yi Tian's behavior, but he didn't care. He raised his head to look at the Ice Dragon's sacred sword and said in a deep voice, "You're really haunting me. If I don't kill you, I swear I won't give up." The Ice Dragon's sacred sword's voice was filled with malevolence. Countless sword chi surged and bombarded the ancient castle. Clang clang. The ancient castle shook violently. Divine might overflowed into the heavens as it blasted towards the sword chi. A world-destroying wave of air instantly covered the sky and surged in all directions. The Wuxia city below was directly reduced to ashes by this wave of air. Fortunately, the people in the city had already evacuated. Otherwise, it would have been a scene of misery and suffering. To the Star River, Qin Feiyang shouted, his eyes filled with killing intent. This was not the first or second time. If this continued, who knew when he would be ambushed by the Ice Dragon's sacred sword again? Therefore, he had to destroy this source of trouble. The reason he went to the Star River was to avoid harming innocent creatures, because he wanted to open the slaughter domain. The ancient castle naturally understood what he meant, and immediately brought the two of them to rush towards the Star River. Yi Tian had been observing Qin Feiyang the entire time. He could clearly see the killing intent in Qin Feiyang's eyes. Was he going to attack the sovereign divine weapon? Clang. However, just as the ancient castle was about to enter the Star River, the sword light that had appeared before once again appeared, crazily rushing towards the ancient castle and Qin Feiyang. You think you can stop this sovereign with just a supreme-level heaven-defying artifact? The ancient castle coldly snorted. The divine might roared. And the sword light directly shattered. Then, it brought Qin Feiyang and the other two into the vast Star River without looking back. Qin Feiyang, what exactly is going on? Yi Tian looked at the ice dragon's sacred sword behind him and frowned. I originally thought that it was your grandfather who wanted to kill me, but I didn't expect it to be him. But I'm a little puzzled. They were clearly here for me, but why did they kill you as well? Qin Feiyang said. So you're saying that I'm a fish in the pond? Yi Tian was stunned. Fish in the pond? Qin Feiyang sneered and said, I already had a premonition that this matter was not simple, and the result was as I expected. What do you mean? Yi Tian raised his eyebrows. You've been used. In other words, you're a bait to lure me out. And if I'm not wrong, your grandfather is also involved in this matter, Qin Feiyang said. My grandfather is also involved? Yi Tian frowned. That's right. Do you know which power this Dominator divine weapon belongs to? Qin Feiyang asked. I don't know. Yi Tian shook his head. Western Continent, Blood Palace. Qin Feiyang spoke word by word. What? Yi Tian was shocked. But then, he glared at Qin Feiyang and said, You mean my grandfather colluded with the Blood Palace? What else? Didn't I just kill a Wang Hui in Tianfeng City? And this matter was Wang Hui's fault in the first place. But your grandfather has been holding on to it, trying every means to kill me, and even got you and Yi Yuan to come out and find me. Isn't there something fishy about this? I couldn't figure it out in the past, but now that I've seen the Ice Dragon Holy Sword, I finally understand that all of this is instigated by the Blood Palace. Qin Feiyang sneered. Impossible. My grandfather is not such a person. Yi Tian said angrily. Whether it's true or not, it's not up to you to decide. However, I really admire his ruthlessness. He actually didn't even let his own grandson off. Qin Feiyang sneered. It can't be. Yi Tian shook his head. Although the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Palace were not on good terms, this was an internal matter of the Eastern Continent. How could his grandfather collude with the Blood Palace of the Western Continent? Because this was a betrayal of the Eastern Continent. Chapter 3087. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed as he looked at Yi Tian and asked, Then tell me, if your grandfather is really colluding with the Blood Hall, what will you do? I don't know. A trace of confusion appeared in Yi Tian's eyes. Qin Feiyang did not ask again, because now, they had already entered the Star River. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the Ice Dragon's sacred sword and sneered. You really dare to chase after me? Die. The Ice Dragon's sacred sword roared and crazily slashed at Qin Feiyang. The terrifying sharpness immediately shattered millions of miles of space. I don't have time to care about you now, you're on your own. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Tian and said indifferently, then disappeared. Yi Tian frowned, looked at the ancient castle, then looked at the Ice Dragon's sacred sword, then looked around. In the end, he decisively activated the peak-level heaven-defying support technique and rushed into the depths of the Star River. Clang! The Ice Dragon's sacred sword and the ancient castle also collided, and a destructive aura suddenly rolled out. This is the strength of a sovereign weapon. Yi Tian, who had retreated far away, looked at this scene with eyes full of shock. Clang! Just as the ancient castle and the Ice Dragon's sacred sword were locked in battle, accompanied by a sword cry, another 3-feet-long sword appeared. Heaven Dragon God Sword. It appeared too suddenly, and as soon as it appeared, it fully recovered and slashed at the ancient castle. Clang! A crack suddenly appeared on the ancient castle's body. What? There's another sovereign weapon. Yi Tian was dumbfounded. And it was also a sovereign weapon that he had never heard of before. What was going on? When did the Blood Hall have these two sovereign weapons? Rumble! The three sovereign weapons fought crazily. The collision of divine power, the confrontation of the power of laws, caused the vast Star River to collapse crazily, as if doomsday had arrived. More and more cracks appeared on the ancient castle. Facing two sovereign weapons, it was still very difficult for it. Although Yi Yuan was watching the battle, He was also paying attention to his surroundings. Because that supreme-level heaven-defying artifact, and the person who mastered the time law had not appeared. He had been thinking about a question in his mind. Was grandfather really colluding with the Blood Hall? To be honest, he was very unwilling to believe it. Boom. Suddenly, a shocking killing intent surged. Yi Tian was shocked. This was a killing intent that he had never felt before. He quickly looked up and saw a figure covered in blood standing beside the 3 sovereign divine weapons. Qin Feiyang? How is this possible? Yi Tiantong was tongue-tied. At this moment, Qin Feiyang was simply like a god of death. The blood-red sword in his hand, in particular, emitted a sharp light that was not inferior to the 3 sovereign divine weapons at all. If you have the guts, don't run away today. Qin Feiyang's gaze was directly locked onto the Ice Dragon's sacred sword and the Dragon God sword. Clang, the blood-colored sword released a deafening sword cry. He took a step forward, raised the blood-colored sword, and slashed at the Heavenly Dragon's sacred sword. Dazzling sparks shot out, and the Heavenly Dragon's sacred sword was sent flying on the spot. Yi Tian was shocked to the extreme. This man actually had the strength to fight against a sovereign weapon. Was this really the Qin Feiyang who had fought with him to a standstill before? Just as Qin Feiyang and the ancient castle were fighting the Heavenly Dragon's sacred sword and the Ice Dragon's sacred sword, Demon Palace. Dozens of people stood in the air in a stalemate. On one side was the Blood Palace. On the other side was the Demon Palace. On the Blood Palace's side, the leader was the blood-red clothed old man, Old Hai, and the Grand Deacon. On the Demon Palace's side, the leader was the Demon Palace's Hall Master, Old Hua, and Chu Yun. High up in the sky, the Blood Palace's sovereign divine weapon, the Horsetail Whisk, and the Demon Palace's sovereign divine weapon, the Red Sword, were also facing each other across the air. The atmosphere at the scene was extremely oppressive. The disciples of the Demon Palace had also retreated from the Demon Palace. They surrounded the people from the Blood Palace in the distance, their eyes filled with anger and fear. Buzz. Suddenly, the sound of the divine sound transmission stone came out. Chu Yin raised her eyebrows, took out the divine sound transmission stone, and a shadow appeared. It was Sun Zhengzhong. Miss Yin, something bad has happened. There are 2 sovereign divine weapons that have never been seen before coming to Wine Sea City. There is also a mysterious person who has mastered the laws of space and time, and a supreme divine weapon. Their target is Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian. Sun Zhengzhong exclaimed. What? Chu Yun's expression changed. Old Hua, who was beside her, was also shocked. He quickly walked to Chu Yun's side and asked, "Then what's the situation now?" "They have already killed their way into the Star River. Their aura is too terrifying. I can't follow them in. I can only sense their aura, so I don't know how the battle is going." Sun Zhengzhong shook his head. "Got it." Chu Yun nodded gloomily, then turned off the divine sound transmission stone, raised her head to look at Old Hai and the others, and sneered. "I was wondering why you didn't make a move. It turns out that you were just trying to restrain us and prevent us from helping Qin Feiyang." "That's right." Old Hai nodded. "In order to kill Qin Feiyang, you guys have really put in a lot of effort. But I don't understand. Qin Feiyang is just a person from the lower realm. What deep grudge does he have with your Blood Palace?" Old Hua frowned. "This has nothing to do with you. You just have to stay out of it," Old Hai said. "Then what if we insist on interfering?" Old Hua laughed sinisterly. "If we insist on interfering?" Old Hai murmured as killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Then we can only fight to the death." Fight to the death. Old Hua's eyes trembled. In order to kill Qin Feiyang, the Blood Palace was actually so reckless. What kind of secret was hidden in this? You have to know that the Blood Palace has an absolute advantage now, because we don't have to worry about the disciples of the Blood Palace and the people of the Western continent. But you guys are different. We are in the Demonic Palace now. If we really fight, not only the Demonic Palace, but the entire Eastern continent will be caught in the flames of war. In the end, even if we are all annihilated, the Eastern continent will become a purgatory. Old Hai sneered. Old Hua's face darkened. "That's right. Now, They really didn't dare to fight with the Blood Palace. For supreme existences like them, the entire eastern continent would be turned into a battlefield once a battle broke out. When the time came, the people would be plunged into misery and suffering, and blood would flow like rivers. This was absolutely unavoidable. As the overlord and ruler of the eastern continent, they definitely couldn't let this happen. At the same time, Alliance Capital, the Vice Alliance Master suddenly stood up and looked at the Void City Lord's shadow in front of him. He shouted, "What did you say? Tiana was attacked by 2 sovereign divine weapons?" "Yes." The City Lord nodded. "What's going on?" The Vice Alliance Master was confused. Didn't they say that they would only kill Qin Feiyang? Why did they kill Tiana as well? Where are they now? The Vice Alliance Master asked in a deep voice. The City Lord said, "They are in the Star River. Young Master is also in the Star River. We don't know if he is alive or dead." "Bastard!" The Vice Alliance Master roared. He immediately put away the divine sound transmission stone, opened the altar, and rushed toward Wind Sea City. Star River. The battle between Qin Feiyang and the ancient castle, the Ice Dragon's sacred sword and the Celestial Dragon God sword, had already reached its climax. Qin Feiyang was covered in blood. However, the blood that flowed out was also absorbed by the blood-colored longsword. The ancient castle, the Ice Dragon's sacred sword, and the Celestial Dragon God sword also had many cracks. "Qin Feiyang, the humiliation you brought to me in the ancient world, I will pay you back 100 times today." The Celestial Dragon God sword roared. 99 heavenly dragons roared out, carrying with them the power to destroy the heavens and earth, and charged toward Qin Feiyang. I could crush you back then, and I can do the same today." Qin Feiyang's blood-colored hair fluttered. The blood-colored longsword in his hand bloomed with dazzling bloodlight. Countless sword chi turned into 99 blood dragons and rushed forward crazily. Boom. At this moment, the entire Star River was trembling. Yi Tian retreated again and again. His heart was filled with shock. It turned out that this was Qin Feiyang's true strength. When he fought with him, it was not even 1 in 10,000. However, ancient world? What was this? Was there such a place in the Sky Cloud realm? Sword Domain Soul Seas. The Celestial Dragon God sword shone brightly. A sword chi formed from sword chi enveloped Qin Feiyang. This was the ultimate killing move of the Celestial Dragon God sword. It could instantly erase a person's divine soul. Qin Feiyang had already experienced it. He directly retreated and slashed out with the blood-colored longsword. Boom. The sword domain shattered. The Star River was annihilated. On the other side, the ancient castle and the Ice Dragon's sacred sword also attacked without holding back. Although there was no blood, their bodies were shattering. As sovereign divine weapons, each fragment had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. "Qin Feiyang, we can't continue fighting." Suddenly, the voice of the ancient castle sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. "Why?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Have you ever wondered why the person hiding in the dark and the heaven-defying supreme artifact never showed up? If I'm not wrong, they want to wait for us and the Ice Dragon's sacred sword and the Dragon God sword to injure each other before coming out to kill us. This is also the reason why the Ice Dragon's sacred sword and the Dragon God sword are so desperate to fight us. But we are different. Although the Black Tortoise realm has many heaven-defying divine weapons, none of them have reached the level of supreme divine weapon. As for that little brat, although he can control the origin energy, you also know the consequences of using the origin energy to fight against a sovereign divine weapon. Moreover, we don't know if there are any other hidden experts besides the mysterious person who controls the law of time and the supreme divine weapon. In the end, not only will we die, even the creatures in the Black Tortoise realm won't be able to escape." The ancient castle said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled as he roared, "But I'm not willing." "I know you're not willing. I'm not happy either. But we have no choice now. We have to endure. When you become stronger, we'll find them and settle the old and new debts together." The ancient castle said. Qin Feiyang was silent. "Are you waiting for the people from the Demon Palace? Don't wait. Look at how big the commotion is, but the people from the Demon Palace still haven't appeared. What does this mean? It means that they must be in trouble. Perhaps it's as you said. This is a meticulously planned scheme by the Blood Palace. Since it was planned by the Blood Palace, how could they let the blood demons support us? Where there's life, there's hope. Don't be impulsive. The ancient castle said. Qin Feiyang's face sank as he thought to himself. All right, I'll find them and settle the old and new debts together. Retreat. Chapter 3088. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Feiyang and the ancient castle immediately charged towards the dragon god sword and the ice dragon sacred sword with all their might. Clang. Accompanied by two loud sounds, the two sovereign-level divine weapons were immediately sent flying. But at the same time, that terrifying power also sent Qin Feiyang and the ancient castle flying, smashing into the depths of the Star River. Blood gushed out of Qin Feiyang's mouth. The ancient castle was also in a situation where it was almost torn apart. How are you guys? Yi Tian was in the depths of the Star River. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the ancient castle that was smashing towards him, he frowned. I won't die. Qin Feiyang forcefully stabilized his body and was about to call out Qin Batian. But at this moment, Yi Tian waved his hand, and a space-time teleportation channel appeared. Qin Feiyang was stunned. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. Yi Tian roared and took the lead to enter the teleportation channel. Qin Feiyang regained his senses and immediately followed the ancient castle into the teleportation channel. Don't even think about it. Seeing this, the dragon god sword and the ice dragon sacred sword crazily attacked. If we want to leave, you can't stop us. Qin Feiyang's voice rang out in the space-time teleportation channel. Following closely, the blood-colored sword flew out from the channel and charged towards the two sovereign-level divine weapons. With a loud bang, the two sovereign-level divine weapons crushed the blood-colored sword, but when they looked at the teleportation channel again, it had already closed. Damn it, damn it! The dragon god sword and the ice dragon sacred sword roared again and again. It was not easy to seize this opportunity, but who would have thought that Qin Feiyang would slip away again? As for the mysterious man hiding in the dark and the supreme-level heaven-defying artifact, they did not appear from the beginning to the end. Demon Palace. Both sides were still in a stalemate. Suddenly, a middle-aged man in black flew over from afar and landed beside the blood-red-clothed old man, muttering a few words in a low voice. What? The blood-red-clothed old man raised his eyebrows. The Demon Palace Lord laughed. Looking at your reaction, they didn't succeed. The blood-red-clothed old man stared at the Demon Palace Lord. Haha. The Blood Hall's big shots came out in full force, and the two sovereign divine weapons even went to Wind Sea City in person, but they still couldn't stop a little guy who just reached the imperishable realm. If this matter were to spread out, I'm afraid your Blood Hall would become the laughingstock of the Sky Cloud realm. Elder Hua laughed complacently, the mockery on the faces of Chu Yun, and the group of Demon Hall heavyweights behind her was undisguised. Go. The blood-red-clothed old man shouted angrily as he opened a stone door and left. Old Hai and the others also walked through the stone door with gloomy faces. The Horsedale Whisk didn't linger and quickly flew through the stone door. Awesome, this is awesome. Elder Hua could not stop laughing. Yeah. This is the first time I've seen this old thing with such an ugly expression. The Demon Hall Master also nodded and smiled. Hey, is this the time to be happy? The Blood Hall didn't succeed this time. Given their conduct, there will definitely be a next time. We have to think of a way. Chu Yun frowned. Elder Hua and the Demon Hall Master looked at each other and fell silent. Hall Master Elder Hua Little Yun, who is this Qin Feiyang? Not only does he have such terrifying means, but he also made the Blood Hall so wary. The group of Demon Hall heavyweights behind the three looked at Elder Hua and the other two suspiciously. The Demon Hall Master pondered for a while and sighed. They are people from the lower world. Lower world? The group of heavyweights was stunned. That's right. As for the grudge between them and the Blood Hall, we don't know. However, the Blood Hall's enemy is also our Demon Hall's friend. Moreover, the Blood Hall has 2 sovereign divine weapons now. We can't lose this Qin Fei Yang, because our Demon Hall only has 1 sovereign divine weapon. If the Blood Hall really starts a war, it won't do us any good. Chu Yin said. One of the heavyweights frowned and said, Little Yin, are you saying that we should curry favor with this Qin Fei Yang? Not curry favor, but cooperation, Chu Yin said. Then why don't we think of a way to snatch his sovereign divine weapon? Another heavyweight said. Snatch. Even 2 sovereign divine weapons can't stop them. Do you think we can snatch it with our strength? Chu Yin raised her eyebrows. The heavyweights fell silent. Moreover, this kid also has a heaven-defying ability. His strength can also reach the level of a sovereign divine weapon. So we can't fight to the death with him like the Blood Hall. Chu Yin said. Little Yin is right. Whether it's this Qin Fei Yang or that madman Mo, their talents are extremely shocking. Their future achievements might not be any worse than ours. So being friends with them is the wisest choice. The Demon Hall Master nodded. Chu Yin glanced at Elder Hua and said with a smile, I'll leave this matter to you. Me. Elder Hua was slightly stunned. He shook his head and said, It's not like you don't know Qin Fei Yang and Madman Mo's attitude. They are not interested in our Demon Hall at all. Then what do you think we should do? Chu Yin frowned. Elder Hua pondered for a moment and said, I think we shouldn't force them. We should secretly help them, and let them feel our goodwill. I agree. If we force them, it will only cause them to be disgusted. The Demon Hall Master nodded and waved his hand. All right, let's disperse. Also, don't tell anyone about Qin Fei Yang and the others' origins to avoid causing a commotion. Understood. The heavyweights nodded and turned to leave. After the heavyweights left, Elder Hua said to Chu Yin, Do you think they were disgusted by my attitude back then? Is that why they are unwilling to come to our Demon Hall? What attitude? The 2 of them were suspicious, Elder Hua said. I just looked down on them. That's possible. Chu Yin smiled mockingly. You're still smiling. Didn't you have such an attitude back then? Elder Hua glared at Chu Yin. But I didn't show it. They didn't know, but you did, Chu Yin said. Elder Hua's face darkened. He said, I'm going to relax. After saying that, he turned around and left. Chu Yin and the Demon Hall Master looked at each other, and couldn't help but smile. Then they also left. At the same time, Wuxia City. The city was no longer there. The ground was also filled with the sky. The people of Wuxia City surrounded the void, and looked at the Star River. The battle fluctuations disappeared? Is the battle over? But why didn't I see anyone coming out of the Star River? Everyone's eyes were filled with surprise. The Dragon God Sword, the Ice Dragon Sacred Sword, the mysterious person, and the supreme-level heaven-defying divine artifact had all opened the altar and left. So until now no one had seen anyone come out of the Star River. At the peak of the clouds, 4 figures stood side by side. They were Sun Jingzhong, Zhuo Tiansheng, the City Lord and Elder Yu. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sinister aura descended. The 4 of them were shocked and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw a green-robed old man holding a snake-shaped walking stick appear in the void behind them. Greetings, Deputy Alliance Leader. The City Lord and the other 2 hurriedly went forward and bowed. Sun Jingzhong frowned and did not make a sound. The green-robed old man glanced at the City Lord and the other 2, then looked at Sun Jingzhong, and then looked at the Star River frowning. Why is there no movement? The battle fluctuations just now suddenly disappeared. We don't know what's going on? The City Lord hurriedly said. When the Deputy Alliance Leader heard this, he immediately turned into a stream of light, and rushed towards the Star River. The City Lord and the other 2 followed closely behind. Sun Jingzhong hesitated for a moment before following in. When they entered the Star River, they found that there was no one in sight. The 5 of them suddenly froze there. Where was he? The Deputy Alliance Leader came back to his senses and immediately looked at the City Lord and the other 2 shouting, Where's Tian? We didn't see the young master come out. We don't know either. The City Lord and the other 2 were terrified. Trash, trash. The Deputy Alliance Leader was furious, and the snake-shaped walking stick in his hand suddenly released a terrifying aura. The city lord and the other two were immediately blasted out, their faces pale and blood gushing out. Please forgive us, Lord. The three of them did not dare to resist at all, and knelt in the void. If anything happens to Tian, or I will hold you responsible. The deputy alliance leader roared and turned around and left like lightning. At the same time, in the depths of an unknown mountain, Yi Tian stood in the sky. His face was full of fear. However, Qin Feiyang's face was extremely gloomy. As for the ancient castle, it had already returned to the Black Tortoise world to repair its damaged body. Huff. A moment later, Yi Tian let out a long breath and raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang. His eyes were complicated. Originally, he was here to kill Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo, but he did not expect to escape with this person. This should be considered a life and death friend. Qin Feiyang, you saved me once in the sky above Wuxia City, and I saved you once in the Star River. We're even. Yi Tian said. You should know that there are people around me who have mastered the space-time law. So I don't need you to do anything, and I can easily leave. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Tian could not help but frown, not grateful? But Qin Feiyang changed the topic and smiled faintly. I still have to thank you. Hearing this, Yi Tian's brows relaxed. That's more like it. Qin Feiyang asked. Do we still have to continue the battle? Yi Tian's expression stiffened and he smiled bitterly. There's no need. You can even fight against a sovereign divine weapon. How can I be your opponent? You're not bad yourself. The world only knows that you've mastered the earth and fire laws, but they don't know that you've also mastered the space-time law. Qin Feiyang said. You should at least have some trump cards. Yi Tian shook his head and smiled. Then how many trump cards are you hiding? Qin Feiyang was curious. What about you? Yi Tian asked. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Since we're not fighting, then I'll take my leave. Wait. Yi Tian hurriedly stopped Qin Feiyang and asked, Where's Madman Mo? He's in seclusion. I know what you're thinking. To be honest, even if you still have the space-time law, you're not his opponent. Besides, your brother's death was not his fault. I believe you should be a reasonable person. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Tian fell silent. Of course, he knew what Yi Yuan had done in Wuxia City. But that was his brother after all. Blood was thicker than water. He couldn't let it go just like that. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Help me tell Madman Mo that I'm waiting to fight with him. No matter who wins or loses in the end, this matter is over. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Yi Tian's meaning was already very clear. To use this battle to end things. Qin Feiyang could also understand. After all, they were brothers. Yi Tian had to do something. Chapter 3089. Just as Yi Tian opened a space-time passage and was about to leave, the voice transmission stone suddenly vibrated. Yi Tian was stunned and took out the voice transmission stone. Qin Feiyang was also about to enter the Black Tortoise realm. Seeing this, he couldn't help but glance at Yi Tian. The person who sent Yi Tian a message at this time was most likely the deputy leader. He was still very unfamiliar with the deputy leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, so he couldn't help but be curious. Yi Tian checked the voice transmission stone and couldn't help but glance at Qin Feiyang. It's your grandfather? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. Yi Tian nodded. Then do you need me to leave? Qin Feiyang said. You obviously don't want to leave, and you still ask me? Yi Tian shook his head and activated the voice transmission stone. Buzz. The figure of a green-robed old man immediately appeared. Who else could it be but the deputy leader? Grandfather. Yi Tian bowed. Tian, are you all right? The deputy leader's face was full of concern. I'm fine. Yi Tian shook his head. Looking at the concern on his grandfather's face, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. It's good that you're fine. The deputy leader also breathed a sigh of relief and asked. Then where are you now? Where's Qin Feiyang? I'm in the mountains south of Wuxia City. As for Qin Feiyang, Yi Tian glanced at Qin Feiyang standing opposite him and said, He's already left. He's not dead? The deputy leader frowned. No. Yi Tian shook his head. Even with two sovereign divine weapons, they still couldn't kill him. This person is really lucky. The deputy leader's face was full of disbelief. How do you know there are two sovereign divine weapons? Does this matter really have something to do with you? Yi Tian raised his eyebrows. The deputy leader's heart trembled, and he said with a smile, "What does this matter have to do with me? I know about the two sovereign divine weapons because Zhuo Tiansheng and the others reported to me. Just now, I personally went to Wuxia City, but you've already left." "Really?" Yi Tian asked. "Of course. When have I ever lied to you?" The deputy leader smiled. Yi Tian took a deep breath and said with a smile, "That's all for now. I'll go back immediately." "Okay." The vice leader nodded. Yi Tian turned off the divine sound transmission stone and looked at Qin Feiyang. "I told you, this has nothing to do with my grandfather." Qin Feiyang couldn't help but frown. "I believe in my grandfather. As for the blood hall you mentioned, it's actually very easy to understand. Think about it, whether it was the battle between my younger brother and Madman Mo, or today's battle between you and I. Both of them caused an uproar in the Eastern continent. I believe you also know that the Blood Hall has always had many spies lurking in our Eastern continent. So they naturally know about this. So they hid in the Wuxia City in advance, waiting for us to fight. What I'm saying is, if grandfather is truly colluding with the Blood Hall, then they wouldn't have killed me as well," Yi Tian said. Qin Feiyang remained silent. Yi Tian's analysis was very reasonable, but his intuition told him that the Vice Alliance Master was definitely related to this matter. "Alright. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. Anyway, it's not very important to our relationship. You must tell Madman Mo what I said just now. I'll be waiting for him at any time." After saying that, Yi Tian opened another space-time tunnel and turned around to leave. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Tian's back. Putting aside other things, this person's character was actually quite good. He was very clear about gratitude and grudges. Unfortunately, their standpoints were different, and they were destined to not be friends. Whoosh! Suddenly, a fiery red figure appeared in the void in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly raised his head. However, when he saw who it was, his expression was rather stunned. "What's with your expression?" Elder Hu looked at him with dissatisfaction. "No. How did you know I was here?" Qin Feiyang frowned. One had to know that this time, it was Yi Tian who opened the space-time tunnel and brought him to the depths of this unknown mountain. Logically speaking, even if Elder Hu's methods were heaven-defying, he shouldn't know his whereabouts. "This old man can tell your fortune. Do you believe me?" Elder Hu smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered and suddenly took out a token. This was Elder Hu's identity token. Needless to say, it was definitely related to this thing. Seeing this, Elder Hu's pupil shrank slightly and he asked suspiciously, "Why did you take out this token? Still playing dumb? Do you believe that I won't crush it right now?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "Ahem." Elder Hu coughed dryly and said with a smile, "Nothing can escape your eyes. But don't misunderstand, I'm not doing this to monitor you." "Then why?" Qin Feiyang was now very unhappy that Elder Hu played such a small trick. This token must contain Elder Hu's divine sense. Through this divine sense, Elder Hu could easily know his whereabouts. "You're not familiar with the Sky Cloud realm. If you encounter any danger, no one will help you. So this old man is doing this to protect you. If you really encounter any danger, this old man can immediately know your location through this token and rush over to save you." Elder Hu smiled. "So I have to thank you?" Qin Feiyang looked at him playfully. "That's not necessary." Elder Hu waved his hand. "Since you're doing this to protect me, why didn't you appear when the Blood Hall came to kill me? Are you afraid?" Qin Feiyang smiled playfully. "Afraid? In the Sky Cloud realm, there's no one that this old man is afraid of," Elder Hu said proudly. "You're bragging." Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. "I'm not bragging. This old man didn't appear because I was restrained by the Blood Hall and couldn't get away." Elder Hu sighed. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. As expected, the Demon Hall was also in trouble. Fortunately, he didn't continue fighting. Otherwise, what Gu Chao was worried about might really happen. Because a supergiant that dominated the Western continent could get as much support as he wanted. But he couldn't. He could only rely on himself and the people around him. First in the Sky Cloud Ocean, and now in the Wind Sea City. It seems like the Blood Hall won't let this go. Kid, listen to this old man's advice and follow me to the Demon Hall. At least in the Demon Hall, the Blood Hall won't dare to act so recklessly. After Elder Hu finished speaking, he looked at Qin Feiyang's reaction. He wanted to know if he would be disgusted. But Qin Feiyang didn't feel disgusted. On the contrary, there was a trace of gratitude on his face. Because he wasn't an arrogant person. Elder Hu was obviously concerned about him. If he felt disgusted, wouldn't it be repaying kindness with evil? Qin Feiyang would never do such a thing. He was a person who knew how to be grateful. If someone treated him well, he would repay it 100 times or 1,000 times. How about this? Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and looked at Elder Hu with a smile. Let me discuss with everyone first. Okay. Elder Hu nodded. Because this answer was already beyond his expectations. Discussing meant that there was a possibility. Then I'll leave first? Qin Feiyang asked. Go. Elder Hu waved his hand. Qin Feiyang smiled and entered the Black Tortoise Realm. Then he controlled the Black Tortoise Realm and quickly left. He wasn't guarding against Elder Hu. Even with the token, he couldn't guard against Elder Hu. He was guarding against the Deputy Alliance leader. After all, he and Yi Tian had separated here. If Yi Tian went back and told the Deputy Alliance leader, he would probably be killed again. 1 hour later, the Black Tortoise Realm landed in a canyon. The beasts here were so powerful that there were even half-step sovereigns. Qin Dage, father is looking for you. Zhuo Shaoxian stood in Lunatic's courtyard and shouted at Qin Feiyang, who was in the sky. Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment, and then smiled helplessly. The exposure of the ancient castle would definitely cause a huge uproar in the eastern continent. In the future, no matter where he went, he would become the center of attention. Zhuo Tianxing must have sent him a message because of this. This was the so-called, a man fears fame while a pig fears fattening. Swoosh. Qin Feiyang landed beside Zhuo Shaoxian and looked up. Not only Zhuo Tianxing, but Elder Yu and the city lord were also there. What can I do for you? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. I wouldn't dare. The city lord hurriedly waved his hand and sighed. Who would have thought that a nameless little guy would have a sovereign divine weapon? You've really hidden it well. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Zhuo Tianxing was puzzled. If you have such a powerful trump card, why are you hiding it? You can't rely on the sovereign divine weapon for everything. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That's true. Not only do you have a sovereign divine weapon, but you also control 2 types of law powers. Yet, you're so low-key. Your state of mind is admirable. The city lord smiled. Qin Feiyang was a little embarrassed when he heard this. The city lord's face turned serious. This message is actually the Deputy Alliance leader's idea. Deputy Alliance leader? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. The city lord nodded. You didn't tell him about our relationship, did you? Qin Feiyang was surprised. No. You can rest assured about this. We're not that stupid. The city lord hurriedly waved his hand. That's good. Qin Feiyang sighed. The Deputy Alliance leader wants us to find a way to find you and tell you that he wants to talk to you. The city lord said. Talk about what? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Reconciliation. The city lord smiled. Reconciliation? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Maybe it's because he knows that you have a sovereign divine weapon, and is afraid that you'll take revenge, so he wants to reconcile with you. Actually, this is a good thing. Because if you really reconcile, then Little Madman and Xiao Xian can be together openly. We don't have to worry about you all the time like thieves and contact you all the time. The city lord said. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. His eyes flickered. But is he really trying to reconcile? Otherwise. The grudge between you and our rogue cultivator alliance is because of Wang Hui. Wang Hui is just a small character and is not important at all. So, the grudge between you all isn't that deep. The city lord said. Wang Hui is a small character, but what about Yi Yuan? You all have to be clear that Yi Yuan is his grandson. Senior brother Madman killed him. That's a blood feud. How can the Deputy Alliance leader let it go so easily? In any case, I don't believe it. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The city lord and the other two looked at each other, and felt that it made sense. Let's talk about this later. Moreover, even if the Deputy Alliance leader doesn't come looking for me, I will take the initiative to look for him sooner or later. As for you all, don't bother about anything. This is also considered wise to protect yourself. Qin Feiyang reminded. All right. The three nodded. Chapter 3090. After the conversation, Zhuo Xiaoxian put away the voice transmission stone and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Dage, if the vice leader really reconciles with you, will you forgive him? Forgive? Qin Feiyang was startled. Why? Is there a problem with that? Zhuo Xiaoxian was suspicious. No. I just feel that you're too naive. Because for this kind of thing, whether it's me or the vice leader, the word forgive is not suitable. Qin Feiyang shook his head. All right. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. In fact, she really wanted Qin Feiyang to reconcile with the vice leader, because then she could return to the city lord's mansion and reunite with her family. We'll talk about it later. Qin Feiyang smiled and entered the ancient castle. He closed the stone door of the cultivation room and sat on the ground, focusing on comprehending the six-word technique. Although the fight with Yi Tian had caused such a huge commotion, he seemed to have a deeper understanding of the six-word technique. Therefore, he wanted to strike while the iron was hot and quickly figure out the hidden meaning of the six-word technique. A few days passed. A few days outside were thousands of years in the Black Tortoise world. Lunatic finally comprehended the third profound of the Law of Thunder. However, seeing that Qin Feiyang was in seclusion, he continued to cultivate. The last thing he wanted to see was Qin Feiyang surpassing him, because there was already a slaughter zone that made him feel pressured. If Qin Feiyang also surpassed him in the Law of Thunder, what sense of existence would he have in the future? Don't say it. This kind of invisible competition between the two of them was really quite effective. Their strength was getting stronger day by day. Kinglan Snow Mountain. That evening, in a valley, two figures stood opposite each other. The atmosphere was quite heavy. What do you mean? How dare you attack Tianer? The vice leader broke the silence, his face full of anger. Calm down. The one standing opposite the vice leader was still the mysterious black-robed man. How am I supposed to calm down? We were supposed to kill Qin Feiyang, but in the end, it was Qin Feiyang who saved Tianer's life. Isn't that funny? Most importantly, even so, you still haven't succeeded? Could it be that the people of the Blood Palace are all a bunch of good-for-nothings? The vice leader said angrily. I advise you to be more polite. The black-robed man's tone turned cold. What is it? You still want to kill me? The vice leader sneered. If you continue to insult the blood hall like this, I might as well kill you, the black-robed man said. Boom. The snake-shaped walking stick in the vice leader's hand suddenly released a terrifying aura. The surrounding glaciers immediately began to collapse. The void was also shattered into pieces. Seeing this, the black-robed man raised his eyebrows. Kill me? You don't understand the situation, do you? Right now you are in the eastern continent and the Kanglan Snow Mountain. This is my territory. If there's anyone to kill, it should be me who kills you. The Vice Alliance Master's eyes flickered with a faint green light. He was like a poisonous snake, causing people's scalps to go numb. Fine, fine, fine. I'm afraid of you. Actually, attacking Yi Tian was also for your sake. The black-robed man waved his hand, as if admitting defeat. Are you trying to kill my grandson, or are you doing this for my sake? Do you think I'm stupid? The Vice Alliance Master became even angrier. That's really the case. Think about it. If we don't attack Yi Tian, what will the people from the Demon Hall think? They will think that Yi Tian is a bait that we arranged. At that time, the Demon Hall will begin to monitor you and your grandson. Is this a good thing for you? The black-robed man explained. The Vice Alliance Master was silent for a while before he said gloomily, "Even so, you can just put on an act. There's no need to kill him. Are the people from the Demon Hall stupid? Do you think we can fool them by putting on an act? Besides, doesn't Yi Tian control the space-time law? It's definitely not a problem for him to escape. Speaking of this matter, you still have to give us an explanation because it was your grandson Yi Tian who activated the space-time law and escaped with Qin Feiyang and the others," the black-robed man said angrily. "I've already told you these days. I know, but asking me to give you an explanation is too ridiculous. Who doesn't know that Qin Feiyang also has someone who controls the space-time law by his side? Even if Tian didn't make a move, you can't stop Qin Feiyang. At the end of the day, it's your blood hall that's too incompetent." The Vice Alliance Master had a mocking look on his face. The black-robed man clenched his fists tightly, making cracking sounds. Qin Feiyang's escape had already made him extremely angry. Now that he was being mocked by the Vice Alliance Master, he was undoubtedly even angrier. "You don't have to look so murderous. It's okay to scare children, but it's still far from enough to scare me. Your blood hall is also unreliable. I'd better think of a way myself." The Vice Alliance Master snorted coldly. "What way do you have?" The black-robed man was stunned. "This matter can only be solved with wisdom. Qin Feiyang still doesn't know that I'm related to your blood hall, so it's not too difficult to set a trap for Qin Feiyang. Just wait for my notice." After the Vice Alliance Master finished speaking, he turned around and left without looking back. The black-robed man looked at the Vice Alliance Master's back, his eyes flickering. Then he turned around and quickly disappeared. Although the days passed, the story about Qin Feiyang became more and more interesting. After tea and meals, people were discussing it. The reason was none other than the castle, a sovereign divine weapon. A little guy in the initial immortal realm actually had a sovereign divine weapon? And it was a sovereign divine weapon that had never been heard of before. For the people of the Sky Cloud realm, this was simply a bombshell. Therefore, not only the Eastern continent, but the Western continent, Northern continent, and Southern continent also received this news. The giants of all parties expressed their disbelief. Moreover, they were secretly investigating Qin Feiyang's origin, because such a person couldn't be just an ordinary person. However, besides the higher-ups of the Demon Hall and the Blood Hall, no one could find out Qin Feiyang's background. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. Now I finally understand why these two guys don't want to be with us. They dislike us and are afraid that we will drag them down. Cloud Sea City, Tianyue Tower. In a secluded room, Yin Xiang shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I don't think so." The Tower Master of Tianyue Tower shook her head. "Why?" Yin Xiang looked at her suspiciously. "Think about it. When Qin Dage was attacked by two sovereign divine weapons, the giants of the Blood Hall also came to the Demon Hall. What does this mean? It means that these two sovereign divine weapons have a lot to do with the Blood Hall. In other words, the people who want to kill Qin Dage are probably from the Blood Hall. Being targeted by such a huge monster like the Blood Hall, Qin Dage and Brother Mo must be worried that we will be implicated, so they don't want to be with us," the Tower Master of Tianyue Tower said. "From what you've said, they're doing this out of good intentions." Yin Xiang was stunned. "Yes. If they are really with us, then we will definitely be hunted down by the Blood Hall. If this isn't good intentions, then what is?" the Tianyue Tower Lord asked. "All right. I'm the one who gauged the heart of a gentleman with the heart of a villain." Yin Xiang smiled bitterly. "You can't say that. Brother Yin, you are also loyal. It's just that we don't know each other very well, so some unnecessary misunderstandings have occurred." The Tianyue Tower Lord smiled. "You really know how to comfort people." Yin Xiang shook his head and smiled. "Where's Meow Meow? Why don't I see her?" "I'm not sure. She seems to have something to do." The Tianyue Tower Lord shook his head. Yin Xiang nodded and smiled. "Since she came to Tianyue Tower, she has been busy with the restaurant business. Let her have a good rest when she is free. Don't be so tired." "Okay." The Tianyue Tower Lord nodded and smiled. "There's one more thing. Have you considered expanding Tianyue Tower?" Yin Xiang asked. Expanding? The Tianhua Tower Lord was stunned. Just like Mo Lu, spread across the entire eastern continent, and even the Sky Cloud realm. Become the largest restaurant in the Sky Cloud realm. Yin Xiang said. Will this work? The Tianhua Tower Lord looked at Yin Xiang in shock. As long as you work hard, it will definitely work. Yin Xiang looked at her encouragingly. This, the Tianhua Tower Lord pondered for a while and shook his head. This is not child's play. I have to discuss it with Meow Meow. All right. No matter what, I'll support you. Yin Xiang smiled slightly. Time flew. Half a year passed. Not only had Wuxia City been rebuilt, but it had also returned to its former prosperity. No, it was more lively than before. Because ever since the incident with Qin Feiyang, many people came to Wuxia City to see if they had the chance to witness Qin Feiyang's glory with their own eyes. Of course, among these people, there were spies from various forces. In short, the last place Qin Feiyang appeared at was the Wuxia City, so everyone waited in the Wuxia City. One day, Wuxia City also welcomed the opening of Tianhua Tower. That's right, it was Tianhua Tower. But it didn't move from Cloud Sea City to Wuxia City. It was a branch of Tianhua Tower. Obviously, in the end, the Tianhua Tower Lord accepted Yin Xiang's suggestion. Since he was going to do it, he would do it the best. At the same time, in the ancient castle, half a year had passed outside, and more than 100,000 years had passed in the Black Tortoise realm. On this day, Qin Feiyang finally opened his eyes, and they were filled with surprise. After all these years of pondering and comprehending, he finally understood the profundity of the six-word divine formula. Just as he thought, the six-word divine formula was formed from the profundity of the laws. The kill formula came from the law of slaughter. The movement formula came from the law of wind. The battle formula came from the law of war. The return formula came from the law of force. Returning one's opponent's strength to his opponent was the profundity of the law of force. Battle was also a type of law. It emphasized battle intent, spirit, and courage. The law of wind was naturally speed. Needless to say, the law of slaughter. After being with Madman for so long, Qin Feiyang had a certain understanding of the law of slaughter. In other words, as long as he grasped these four laws, Qin Feiyang would possess 7 laws. At that time, he would naturally possess the qualifications to step into the sovereign realm, because a sovereign realm only needed to comprehend 6 laws. This made Qin Feiyang's heart burn with passion, and he continued his seclusion. Compared to imagining and comprehending, Qin Feiyang's current state was much simpler. This was because the kill, battle, advance, and return techniques were good references. To be more precise, the 6-word divine formula was equivalent to an inheritance. As long as he could figure out the profound meaning within, comprehending the power of the 4 great laws would be a matter of course. Year after year passed. The Black Tortoise world was still peaceful. It wasn't just Qin Feiyang and Madman. Everyone was working hard. Every once in a while, someone would either break through or comprehend a law. Moreover, it wasn't just Qin Feiyang's group. The other beings of the Black Tortoise world were also getting stronger by the day. Boom. One day, the Black Tortoise world finally gave birth to 2 half-step undying experts. These 2 were undoubtedly Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.